Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode number 70. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back on this, Friday show here, Steelers Nation. Happy New Year's to you all. Happy New Year's to you as well, Dave. I know you have big plans tonight.
Oh, yeah, we got the bottles of champagne all iced up and the fireworks, the in-house fireworks ready to go. Typical yearly stuff here at the Steelers Depot Metroplex in Las Vegas. Nice, hopefully a nice and quiet house maybe tonight, and we'll maybe look out and, obviously Las Vegas got a huge fireworks celebration tonight, but that's way off in the distance and nothing that should make the dog angry. There, but just going to watch some football tonight. I think, like a lot of other people, I think we got the beginning of Alabama and
Cincinnati. I think they
Cincinnati and Michigan and Georgia. Should be a couple of good games. I know I watched a couple of them last night as well too. Already starting to put on my scouting hat a little bit. Look at some of these players. So got an interesting couple of weeks, months ahead of us here.
I did see, though, on that NBC promo last week, it's Miley Cyrus, Pete Davidson, and it said Dave Bryan. So I don't know. Are you hanging out with Miley and Pete Davidson?
Let me tell you,
Miami?
I like, my wife doesn't like Miley Cyrus, but I love me some Miley Cyrus.
Oh, really?
I really, really do. I think she's very, very talented. I like her quirkiness. I like when she does some of these like old covers and all like that, and those kind of things. So I probably will tune a little bit. I think Pete Davidson's a funny dude on top of it, and I don't think his elevator goes to the top floor either. So I like that about him as well too. I'm always kind of attracted to those kind of people like that.
All right. Well, I did not have that on my bingo card, the Miley Cyrus and Pete Davidson insight.
I love me. I mean, you some covers that Miley has done over the years that you can find on YouTube are just absolutely fantastic. So I'd like listening to Miley Cyrus.
Right. Well, good to know. All right, Dave. Let's transition.
How about you? Are you into Miley at all or no?
No, I never really. I'm the millennial over here, but I'm not really a big fan or anything. I don't have really any strong opinions either way, I guess.
All right. What about Pete Davidson? Do you like Pete Davidson? Or?
Yeah, I think he's funny. He's able to date like every woman in America. I don't know how he does it. I need to get some tips from Pete Davidson or something. Figure out what his secret is.
Yeah, you got to be quirky like that. You got to be a little bit more quirkier, Alex. That's what. Yeah. Boy, this thing went off the rails in a hurry, didn't it? I
think you need to have a personality, and I lack a personality, so that's my big issue. I think that's the secret.
Right. Anyway, you're becoming more of a butthole, if you will, like I am. I admire that.
All right, let's make the smooth transition into Steelers talk. We have a lot of important Steelers information. Before we do that, briefly, a little bit later in the show, we'll have guest of the show, friend of the show, Scott Petrak on. Is it Petrak or Petrak? I apologize. I always spoke the pronunciation was Petrak. Okay, of the Medina Gazette to talk about the Cleveland Browns. Give a preview of that game. Of course, this game be played on Monday night. But let's talk about, Dave, the very important news of the day. Ben Roethlisberger holding a press conference on Thursday, and really for the first time himself publicly, he didn't officially announce his retirement, but said all signs point to Monday night against the Cleveland Browns being the last game he'll play at Heinz Field, essentially saying that he plans to retire after this season. And so now the kind of emotions and the feeling, and it's really starting to hit myself and Steelers Nation, that this will be it for Big Ben. Of course, it will be the Week 18 game at Baltimore. And of course, the Steelers could still make the playoffs. So those hopes are not dashed yet, but it is looking like one last game at Heinz Field for number 7 on Monday night.
Yeah, kind of what we thought and expected throughout this season. As it winds down here, what we kind of thought would happen and come out of his mouth. And it's probably good that, obviously you knew he was going to be asked about it during his press conference, with this being the final or potentially the final home game of the season there. And it's good to kind of get all that stuff out of the way, I think, right now. And this is a little bit of a long week. So now it doesn't become a distraction of is this or isn't it kind of thing here. And I thought he handled, the press conference well on the questions. And look, we're still in this thing too. He wanted to make sure he reminded people several times that, we still have a couple of games to win here. And that obviously starts on Monday night against the Browns. And now he's got a little bit of something that he can use in that locker room there for these next couple of days, and saying, look, this is my final game at Heinz Field here. You guys don't let me down. Win one for the burger, kind of speech there. So, look, I mean, you go back, and obviously Twitter and was flooded with video clips. I contributed to that quite heavily. And man, you go back and you see some of the highlights there, especially when Ben was in his prime. Man, people just forget how that was Mr. Extended Play for several years there, and that's obviously the kind of what he was able to do for a large portion of his career there is exactly why he will be a first ballot Hall of Fame guy there. And he obviously isn't the same quarterback that he was 3, 4, 5 years ago. He has been able to kind of adjust his game, if you will, with more of that quick release game and less of that backyard bin game, if you will. But the reason this offense isn't like it was is partially because he doesn't have that backyard bin ability, and he doesn't have guys like AB and Heath Miller, and boy, you just go down the list there like that right now. The offensive lineman, obviously, that he used to have, and Pouncey most recently. So, but there is now some finality to this, and you just hope that it can play out the way he wants it to play out in these final 2 weeks. And not only him, but for the Steelers as well too, because let's face it, the Steelers win these final 2 games, and there's a pretty decent percentage that they might get kind of the help that they need there. And if they do, I mean, we're talking about a team that could wind up still winning the division, right, and still wind up with one more game at Heinz Field, I think.
Yeah, if the Bengals lose out and the Steelers win out, Pittsburgh will win the North, and they will have a home game hosting wild card weekend. So that is even on the table as well. And I do think that was something that Ben made a very clear point of, and something that's part of my terrible take today for Steelers Depot, that the season is not over. Obviously, the focus is rightfully on Ben's potential swan song and the end of his career, but this is not solely a feel-good game against the Browns on Monday night. And so what a great send-off for Ben, if this is going to be his last home game, then to beat the Browns, end their season, and keep the Steelers season alive, man. If you cannot get motivated and up for this game, then I don't know what's going to motivate you. I mean, that place should be loud. The teammates should be energized. There should be no lack of energy at Heinz Field Monday night.
Yeah, the only way you get more pumped would be if actually Sticks was there in person.
Yeah, which, hey, maybe it could happen.
Doing Renegade and stuff like that. Look, we covered this the other day, and I talked about it on the Terrible Take as well too. I mean, he's had a lot of success against Cleveland over his career, especially at home, and on Monday Night Football at home as well too. So it is kind of fitting that the stars have kind of aligned this way, that his potentially his last home game of his career is going to be on Monday Night Football and against the Browns. And kind of like you said, if you can't get the fans and your teammates fired up for this one, then when can you get them fired up for this one? Obviously, sounds like going to get a couple people back too. He's going to have Freiermuth back, it sounds like, and who knows? We'll get into talking here in a minute, I'm pretty sure, about what this offensive line might look like here. But I'm excited, and I'm letting the cat out of the bag a little bit early here. But even though the Steelers are at least started the week, I think 3.5 point home underdogs to the Browns in this one. I mean, I don't know why you would bet against Ben in this one, to be quite honest with you. And I unless something drastically happens, I don't see myself betting against Ben in this one.
It's hard to do that. And I was going to ask, when was the last time the Steelers were home dogs to the Browns? I mean, the Kozar era, I couldn't think of a time when that was the case.
Yeah, they probably have been before, and even during the Ben Roethlisberger era, but it hasn't happened often. If it has happened at all, we'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, I can't think of a time, but yeah, just to Ben, it is heartening to see the support and the videos. And I started going through some old clips last night. I got some things prepared after the Browns game to kind of share. And 2004. I mean, it's just think about that for a second. 2004, we've been watching Ben Roethlisberger play quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's just a remarkable run, all with one team that very, very, not even Tom Brady has done that with one team. And so just for a guy to play his whole career with one club is in itself rare, and to do it at the level that Ben has done it, first ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt in my mind, is just something we may never see again for a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Right. Well, I mean, especially that, especially a quarterback that plays the way that he played for sure. And for one to last that long on top of it. And that's just a rarity overall. You know what, Alex, I remember we had just finished building a house back in Florida at a time and moved in, and we had built an oversized office, took 2 rooms and had them combined together into plans to make a gigantic office for me back then. And we didn't put carpet in that room because I'm very very hard on stuff. So what we were going to do, we were going to have have some sort of textured concrete back there in my office and all like that. So we left it uncarpeted at first. We ended up putting carpet in there right away because my wife didn't like the way something looked in there. But anyway, that was 2004, about April, and the draft was going on. I remember us in the process of moving in, and I had to get that cable hooked up in a hurry and get a TV on a pedestal to, obviously to watch the draft that year. And I can remember watching the draft in that oversized office without any new house and not any carpet on the floor on a kind of a medium-sized TV just having the cable hooked up to the house and all like that. Mm-hmm. And remembering getting so excited, about the team drafting a quarterback in the first round. And that was after reading, because obviously a lot of info that you got back then was internet related, message board kind of stuff, and right. Obviously through the papers and all as well too. And the big speculation at that time was probably going to be an offensive lineman, and Shane Andrews' name is out there. Really, Roethlisberger's name wasn't really, from what I remember. I don't remember there being a lot of speculation that Ben Roethlisberger might be the Steelers' pick. And at that time, obviously had Tommy Maddox, so it didn't feel like it was a slam dunk that the team would go quarterback position in the first round on top of it there. But I just remember being in that room and his name getting called, just getting so excited, not knowing a lot about him back then because we didn't have the YouTube videos right. that you have now and all like that. But it's still kind of crystal clear, even in my clouded mind of that day. Then obviously throughout his rookie season and how that went, everybody remembers him getting forced into action and then going from there. But here we are 18 years later, and you can still vividly remember. So I guess more than anything, I'm blessed that I was old enough. I remember him being drafted, and mm-hmm. I've watched every single game that Ben Roethlisberger has played. So really, really grateful in that. And hopefully he's got more than just the 2 left in this season as well too.
Sure. And as the story goes, the Steelers almost didn't draft Ben. That Bill Cowher wanted to draft Shawn Andrews, and Mr. Rooney came in and said, we're taking Ben. And so that was the deciding factor there. And so it's crazy that, that one decision changed the course of Ben's career, his life, and our lives, and the Steelers franchise course of history, and 2 Super Bowl trophies, 2 Lombardis. So yeah, it's pretty wild to think about. So certainly, again, keep perspective about what Monday's game means for the team, for the playoff hopes, but enjoy the game itself and soak in everything that comes with this game, because it is probably going to be Ben's final one at Heinz Field.
Mm-hmm. Probably will be.
We'll have a lot more time to talk about Ben's career and his, legacy and things like that down the road. Dave, let's talk about some other things to get you ready for Week 17 for this upcoming Steelers-Browns game. Some COVID-related moves made yesterday by the Steelers. They activated linebacker Marcus Allen off the reserve COVID list and then placed cornerback Arthur Millette on the reserve COVID list. Also, they signed a receiver whose name escapes me at the moment. Darius Shepard, I think was his name.
Right.
Does that sound right, Dave? Okay. There you go on that. So Millette unlikely to play in this game on Monday night. That should mean more time for Trey Norwood in the slot. So you would like that Millette because the Browns are a run-heavy team. Millette is kind of that poor man's Mike Hilton type of guy, but you'll probably be in a lot of base defense in this one with all the multiple 12 personnel and things like that the Cleveland likes to run. So the nickel cornerback probably not as important this week as it would be in other games.
Yeah, unless you got behind and got them into a more of a heavy passing situation. But you do, the situations where you would need a guy like Millette on the field, you're going to miss him.
Sure.
Obviously not going to go to the Pro Bowl or getting the All Pro votes, but I think he's kind of done a good job at sort of fitting into that defense as the year has gone on. And he is kind of, a real poor man's Mike Hilton. He's not afraid to get dirty when it comes to, sticking his face in the fan against the run. I think that's been the most notable thing about him, especially in the last couple of weeks, is that he's not afraid to chase stuff down on the backside, stuff coming at him. I'm not afraid to take on blocks and that kind of stuff. Obviously, he lacks in the coverage end of it, but Mike Hilton did too, to some degree. Obviously, I think Millette lacks more than what than Mike Hilton in that area. But, if indeed he's going to miss the game on Monday, and it certainly, you would think odds are that he will, you do have to worry to some degree of what will happen in the nickel type situation when the Steelers get in. Do they move Cam Sutton inside? Bring
Akello Witherspoon.
Akello Witherspoon into the game. And that might be what they do, or they might go a different way. And especially, it'll be interesting to see how they handle dime if they have to get in some dime.
Yeah, well, Millette doesn't play in dime really at all unless there's been severe injury this year, so that shouldn't affect things too much. And if the scenario happens where the Browns do get down, they have to throw, you want Norwood out there to cover anyway. And that even last week, Millette started against the Chiefs in terms of nickel, and then Norwood kind of finished that game out because the Chiefs weren't running the ball a whole lot, at least in that first half. And so this team has really been adverse to play Millette in any sort of passing situations. He doesn't play in dime. He doesn't play in obvious passing situations in nickel and things like that. So his calling card has really been some blitzing, some run stuffing, and there's been some value in that. But that role is pretty niche. And so while I think it is going to be a loss because you would like to have Millette rather than not have him, it shouldn't be a tremendous loss for this team.
How much base defense did the Steelers play in that first meeting? Do you remember percentage-wise?
Can pull it up. I don't know off the top of my head right now. Obviously, some of this is dictated by game circumstance, obviously, but vamp for a second here while I pull up our charting here.
Yeah, the thing when Millette's going to be interesting to see what do you do with him during the offseason. You got two guys in that secondary in Witherspoon and Millette that right now I think currently scheduled to be unrestricted free agents during the offseason, and guys that, once again, we've talked about how many holes this team's going to have during the offseason. Can you get those guys signed up before free agency hits at a decent price to at least alleviate you having to throw some mud at a couple of positions there? So Millette would probably be one that you'd like to have back if the price is right. I don't think you're going to break the bank for a guy like Arthur Millette, but just a familiarity that he would have with the defense, and he would be a nice kind of stepping stone to whatever you did next with his kind of role.
Yeah, I would think that Trey Norwood would kind of take over as the full-time slot guy next year. I want to take a guess. I have the number, but you want to take a guess at what the base rate was in that Week 8 win over the Browns?
72%.
Nah, that's higher. 50%, exactly. Okay. 50%, 29 of 58 snaps. Yeah, so, but 50% is high. I mean, the base number this year's overall has been around 30%. And so if 50% is a pretty high number in a game in which Pittsburgh won. So Yeah, I mean,
how much? What was it in the first half of that game?
Well, you're gonna have to vamp some more, maybe, for me to pull it. Hold on, let me do it here. Let's see. 13 snaps of base in the first half out of 31, so it's going to be less than half. That is going to be 42%. Call it.
It felt like they ran it a lot more than that than they did. I haven't gone back and rewatched that game this week. I've been busy watching the Green Bay game and the game against the Raiders with the Browns. So now if memory serves me, the Browns didn't have a few offensive linemen in that game, didn't have Kareem Hunt in that game as well too. So going to be a little bit different offense that the Steelers faced this time around.
Definitely. Just from a Brown standpoint, again, we'll talk to Scott in a little bit. They're just getting healthier this week in general. They're getting Wolves back at left tackle. Kareem Hunt might play in this game. He's dealing with an ankle injury right now, just came off of COVID, but they're not ruling him out. So overall, they're just a healthier team than where they've been, even compared to just 2-3 weeks ago.
Okay.
All right, Dave, let's talk about the Steelers Thursday injury report, the first one issued of the week. Because
was there anything else that Ben said that stuck out to you?
I'm sure there was. Again, his emphasis on focusing on getting a win and still having playoff aspirations is kind of the primary focus here. And again, I think that's really important perspective. He did say, kind of joking when he said it, but I'm sure he's being serious and honest here that if whenever he does retire, he's not coming back. Do not call him if he retires. The way that there's been rumors about Phillip Rivers and Drew Brees, although those guys have not officially come out of retirement. But Brett Favre retired 18 times, and so once Ben's done, he is done.
Right, and that's kind of way that I have expected it, but things change. You can never say never either. On top of it there, but he talked about was asked if he wants any pomp and circumstance surrounding this, or just going to treat it like another game. Ben always talks about that he doesn't know this stat or he doesn't know that stat, but it was weird to hear him talk about knowing a stat. When asked that, he said, "I found out last week that I've got 91 wins in Heinz Field and broke a tie with Brett Favre for quarterbacks in one facility." And he went on to say, "To me, that will always mean more than yards and touchdowns, wins, because I'm sure you can go back to my first press conference with some of you guys that were here. All I ever said is I want to do is win." Now, I think someone else, I think ESPN Stats and Info had a different version of that stat. I think what Ben was referring to with those 91 wins at Heinz Field and broke a tie with Brett Favre is regular season wins.
Yeah,
there. I think playoff, including playoffs, I think still has Brett Favre ahead of Ben by, 4 or 5 games or something like that.
And maybe Brady as well. There was 2 guys ahead. It was Favre, and I want to say it was Tom Brady.
Okay, so just some clarity there. But for Ben, who says, "Oh, I don't know nothing about stats," he sure was able to roll that one right off the tongue.
Yeah, he did. And then just the last thing there, maybe it didn't come from Ben himself, but Ray-Ray McCloud talked about Ben's hip injury this year, how bad it was, how horrible that bruise that he had earlier this year, and couldn't even bend down to tie his shoes, and then doesn't practice, and then goes out there and plays, never complains and stuff like that. So I know that got some play on Twitter about the lore of Ben and the injuries and stuff like that. This guy's been playing hurt. I was going through clips last night of his first career game, and apparently it was the Ravens game that he came in. The broadcast had said, Ben had a knee injury that week before entering that game, and so the guy's been hurt since he ever started playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that's kind of been the theme of the career. So I kind of chuckled at that, but I mean, he's obviously there's some joke aspect to it, and the playing up and the drama of it. But this guy's played through more injuries than maybe any player in NFL history.
Man, what was it? The Chiefs game? Numerous. What was it? 2016 or something like that. Just kind of the John Wayne. What do you have? Like an ankle or something in that game?
There was a Browns game. I don't know if it was the same one you're thinking of or a different one where they thought he was going to not come back in the second half, and he just limped it out, and they won an ugly Thursday night game or something.
Right, and a Chiefs game, I think, along the same lines, kind of maybe a Thursday night or a Sunday night game, something like that. And then that game against the 49ers that I think the Steelers ended up losing, just the ankle was so bad that week, and kind of wondered, but he made it through that game. Obviously, several issues with his knee over the years and all like that. And the guy the guy won't quit. And he talked about that yesterday in his press conference as well too, about not wanting to come out of that game the other day against the Chiefs there. And look, people are saying, well, what happens if this happens in the Cleveland game, or if that happens, or if the Steelers lose, and what's going to happen against the Ravens? Is that a reason to start? There is no way Ben Roethlisberger would have to be. I mean, there's no way you're going to keep him from starting these last two games and finishing these last two games. If you ask me. So people that are asking questions like, what happens if you lose this game? Do you let do you pull him out of a game for standing ovation, or no, I don't think any of that's going to happen there. This guy's going to play all 60 minutes of these next however many games the Steelers have left from this point forward, which obviously on the calendar says it's 2, but even if it goes further, you are not going to get this guy out of the game.
Yeah. No chance at all. And so that's just not even a thought that's crossed my mind, other than the occasional person asking me about it. Not going to happen.
And that's been his entire career, though.
Right.
You literally, there have been some situations where I've thought to myself, my God, get him out of the game. Either because he's sucking so bad and they down, just where you just know they're not going to come back, or just injury, or being ahead by however many. That guy he loves to compete, and
yep.
That's one of the things about him that you got to love over the years and admire, and it's not going to be any different in these final whatever games he has left.
Absolutely. All right, Dave, speaking of Ben, he was listed on the injury report on Thursday with a pectoral shoulder injury. That pectoral injury he's been listed there basically the entire season with, and also not practicing alongside Ben on Thursday included Buddy Johnson with that foot, Presley Harvin as he deals with the death of his father, and Kendrick Green with a calf injury. Good news on the other side, Pat Freiermuth with a concussion, Chris Wormley with a groin, both practiced in full. So both those guys should be ready for Monday night. That'll be big additions on both sides of the football. And so the big question here in terms of the guys who did not practice, of course, A, what will happen at punter? Will it be Harvin? Will it be Waitman? And then B, Kendrick Green. Will he play? Will he start? If he's healthy, will he start? And obviously, if he's not available for any reason, then it should be J.C. Hassan that we're getting the nod at center.
I have got a feeling, and I said this the other day, that I'm expecting Waitman to be the punter this week. And Harvin, I think, obviously busy with services with his father and the emotional aspect of it. So I'm expecting Waitman to be the punter against the Browns. The guys that didn't practice, the big names. Look, Buddy, I don't think Buddy Johnson's going to be back this week. Ben, obviously, just a day off there. And then it comes down into Kendrick Green, a rookie center struggling with a calf injury that did not practice the first day on a long week. That's not shaping up great, Bob.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even if he was healthy and cleared medically, I would not start him in this game. We'll see what today's practice report kind of says and tells us what direction he might be headed in. But you're right, even just for a rookie, if he does not practice much or if at all this week, it is hard to justify really any rookie starting, especially one that has struggled the way that Kendrick Green has.
That was my terrible take yesterday of the way things are trending here. Could we finally see a different version of an offensive line? And I think there's a good chance of that. I think you're going to see Dan Moore Jr. I think you're going to see Kevin Dotson. I think you're going to see J.C. Hassenauer. I think you're going to see Trey Turner. And I think you're going to see Chukwuma Okorafor there. And I'm here for it, as the kids would say, Alex. I don't know if it's going to be better. I don't know if it's going to be worse. I just want to see it. Kevin Dotson, I don't think he's going to hurt you to have Kevin Dotson back on the field. A definite upgrade over LeGlue and Finney and Hassenauer at that position, particularly, I think. And then, look, I went back through the Chiefs game again since we last talked, just to kind of watch the snaps of J.C. Hassenauer at center. And he's not going to get any all pro votes for it. And it was late in the game, but I like what I saw out of him as opposed to what I had seen out of Kendrick Green earlier in the game. So at this point, I think you owe it to yourselves. You know, they talk all the time about starting the best five. I think, I think we have an opportunity in these final two games to see what is technically the best five on the Steelers roster on the offensive line. And once again, I don't know how it's going to go. It might be worse. It might be better, but I'm here for it.
It's worth a look with how important these games are, with how important, I mean, essentially must win for the Pittsburgh Steelers Monday night. And so you got to play your best guys, the guys who are available, healthy, gotten the reps, and just give you the best chance to win overall. And right now, I think Hassenauer is that guy. Not to get too in the weeds of a Kendrick Green future discussion, but, you know, just to play devil's advocate for a second, again, I think this team really threw Green into the fire, and to expect him to play well this year was probably asking a lot out of the guy for just his circumstances, being a redshirt junior, a new position, you know, filling in Pouncey's, you know, shoes and role. That's a big ask for even ask, you know, Green to make line calls. And so it's just a lot on his plate. So it is reasonable for this is a fair statement, right? It is reasonable to expect and assume that Green will get better this time, you know, next year, correct? No.
Let's go back to the conversation that we had prior during after Green was drafted and before week one. All right. And it was, you had yourself in a situation where Green better be your week one center. If not, then why did you go the path that you went? You didn't bring any veteran guy in, and no, BJ Finney does not count in that there. So, you drafted a guy in the third round like that, and then your only backups at the time were what, J.C. Hassenauer and B.J. Finney. It felt like it felt like a failed pick already. If I remember saying, look, Green better win that job out of training camp. You know, he better be your week one guy, and he was. But in the same breath, a lot of things that we saw on his tape, Alex, have not gone away, and that's usually the case. Usually, the guy that you see on college, the tape in college, is usually what you get at the NFL level. Now, as I've said before, going back and remembering some of the stuff on T.J. Watt, there wasn't as much. There really wasn't the bad that worried you with TJ Watt coming out of Wisconsin. The one of the worries about Watt coming out of Wisconsin was his pass rush tape wasn't all that. You wondered how much more could he progress, okay, especially on his sack reel and all like that. That is a guy that has progressed at the NFL level. Right out of the chute too. And that guy became a better pass rusher right out of the chute. And it wasn't so much about his negative. You worried about his negatives being amplified as much as you were worried about, at least in my case, is how much better could he get, as a pass rusher. And he has. With Kendrick Green, it was, man, can he eliminate those obvious negatives, and then can he also progress and, let's say, as a pass protector against bull rushes and drop an acre and stuff like that,
Right.
So,
but that's a technique issue, and in theory, he can clean up those technique things. Will he do it, and how much better will he get, are open questions. But if it's a technique problem, then it's reasonable to think he can improve upon that.
No, look, I do think though that it's damning though that you've gotten yourself in a position. And you can talk about, the rookie wall with him and yada, yada. But I think it is damning to some degree that you've gotten yourself in a position now. And they'll fortunately be able to use the injury as an excuse, I think, here. But it is a bit damning that you're late in the season. And even without the calf injury, that J.C. Hassenauer is your better center of the two.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not talking about this year. I'm just playing devil's advocate here, just trying to look at the other side of the argument and the case to be made for keeping faith in Kendrick Green is that he was a pretty raw guy coming out of school. We both agreed upon that. He had, athletically, he had the tools, the physicality, the finish, like that stuff was there. But in terms of like being NFL ready, to us at least, it felt like he had a ways to go. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, he had a ways to go. I mean, you have a guy that spent most of his career at guard at Illinois,
right.
And that was the so amazing thing that they drafted him where they drafted him and his size, and it didn't line up a lot with what the Steelers do, period, in drafts.
Right, and that's my point, is that we knew that he was raw, so the fact that he struggled this year should not be a surprise because we knew that it was going to be a struggle for him this year.
Hey, here's my thoughts on it, Alex. From what this isn't like we just have gotten a 5-game look at this kid now. I mean, this kid has played what, 90? What percent of the snaps has he played?
It's a high amount. And again, listen, I'm just trying to look at the other side. I mean, you guys know my thoughts. If I can find a center to upgrade, I'm doing it next year.
That's where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
I don't. You can deal with him however you want during the offseason. Into that, look, you're not cutting him,
Right. Sure.
But in no way, shape, or form, if I have the ability to during the offseason, either via the draft or free agency, to get me a better center, one that I think's even more plug and play, I'm doing it. And I'm just licking my wounds when it comes to Kendrick Green. People say, can you throw him at guard? Sure, absolutely try him at guard. But, he was on the ground at guard, too, at Illinois, folks.
Yeah. And I think in some ways that guard will be worse because he'll be covered up more often and it'll be more one-on-one matchups, especially in pass pro.
Right. So look, you pray for him. You hope he can work out some technique issues. You hope maybe the right offseason program for him will help him clean up some of these things. But I don't have a lot of optimism about him at this point. And once again, you're not going to cut him right now during the offseason or anything like that. But you better not get into into 2022 wondering, well, we got to sink or swim with this guy, because if he sinks, then what the heck you going to do? Because that is the center is probably a very underrated position in the NFL, I think, line calls and all like that. And granted, you have guards that have more one-on-one type battles as you stated, but this running game would be better than it is this year had they had a better center, period. Now, Would it be much better? Probably not, but it would have been better if they would have had a better center this year.
According to Football Outsiders, unfortunately, I think their numbers have become a bit more unreliable this year, but they have Green down for 932 offensive snaps, 98.7% of the snaps. So, I mean, again, he's a rookie, but he's played a lot of football. There's a lot of tape to evaluate. It's not like he's played just 2 games this year. It's not 2010 where these guys sit and, very much ease their way into action. And you don't have to wait 3 years to find out if he has something or not with these guys, especially offensive linemen.
Right.
Yeah, that's a thought there on Kendrick Green, but another discussion to have this offseason. Anything else from Ben, or am I missing any housekeeping stuff here? 7 players still on COVID. Hopefully more will get activated before Monday's game, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, and look, you keep your fingers crossed that this team can get Chris Wormley back playing some snaps this week, I think, as well too. So far so good. If they can keep some of these guys off of the COVID list, right, and get some of these other guys back. I guess the big question now, you don't have Bush, you don't have some of these guys back from the COVID list yet. That could obviously happen while we're on this podcast right now, but I mean, I guess we talked a little bit about the other day. I guess if Bush is off the COVID list, he's going to play in some form or fashion as part of a rotation.
Yeah, you would expect that rotation that was there before Bush went on COVID to continue with Spillane and Bush and Joe Schobert. All right, Dave, let's talk about the coordinator's corner on Thursday. Matt Canada, Keith Butler speaking with the media. And I think a point that you made, Dave, on the podcast really a couple times in recent weeks about Naji Harris and him trying to do a bit too much. Matt Canada seems to agree with that statement. He was asked point blank, is Harris trying to do too much? And Canada said, quote, I think there is probably fairness in that statement, and quote, talked about the competitor that Harris is, how much work he's putting in, how he wants to make the big play. And obviously you can understand that and respect that, but it is probably coming at a cost at times of him missing holes or not getting north-south, not getting what's there. And so turning what could be a 4 or 5 yard gain into, a negative play because he is just trying to do a little too much.
More proof that the Terrible Podcast powers the media, not the other way around. Hello, media members listening to the Terrible Podcast. Glad to have you as usual. Look, it really stuck out. This has really stuck out to me the last 2 games, really kind of specifically. I don't fault Najee Harris for it one bit. When you run behind what we've seen him have to run behind this season, when you hear the words come out of his mouth about a week ago that, texting Eddie Faulkner saying, I got to break a big one, this is a guy trying to help his team in any way possible, right? And it has felt in these last couple of weeks that he's trying to make nearly every run of his a home run. And that's not who Najee is. Now, Najee is also not used to not running behind holes that you could lay down in. And he obviously hasn't had that. But there are like 2 plays, I think, really, really specifically, and I haven't had time to go back. Maybe I'll do it over the weekend here, that I thought, and I think we pointed out at least the one that was down on the Titans end of the field. I think I posted that on Twitter. I think you agree with that. He's got to hit that. He can't dance around in there. 5 yards on the ground on a run for a Steelers offensive run right now is probably the equivalent of a 25-yard run.
Sure feels like it.
Right?
Yep.
So I think he's just got to go get back to the mindset that, a successful run on 1st and 10 is 4 yards. And every opportunity that you think that you have to get 4 yards or more, you got to take it. And once again, I just had the feeling, especially 2 to 3 times against the Chiefs and a couple other times against the Titans there, that there's something there that would get him 5, 6, 7, 8. Maybe even 12. I don't know. That one against the Titans, I think there's a good chance if he breaks an arm tackle there with that linebacker coming off of Kendrick Green, that he's in the end zone with that. And boy, how would we be celebrating that? For sure. So, and I don't have any fault with him on this because he's trying to help his team win. But it's causing him to press a little bit, and I think they need to pull him aside and say, look, just. If the hole's there, hit it. And if it's not, do what you have to do. But I think sometimes there have been some holes there and he's trying to outthink himself. And I think that's causing him some problems. And I think Matt, I'm not going to get a lot of praise from the listeners from Matt Canada agreeing with me. But it was kind of good to see some confirmation there, I think.
Yeah, and I understand you carry the ball. He's going to carry the ball 300 times this year. You're going to miss some holes occasionally just on
sure.
Numbers alone, the way receivers will drop passes if they're targeted 150 times. But yeah, I think there's probably definitely a frustration there with Harris just dealing with this adversity. It's adversity he probably hasn't had to deal with on a professional, on a football level in probably since his freshman year of high school. So I think you just want to create, you want to get the big play, you want to get this run game going, and that may cause you to compensate too much, overcompensate, and make more mistakes than you normally would.
Right. Look, and then once again, I don't blame him for this.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that's foreign to him, right? I mean, and look, we have the stats on him, obviously, from coming out of Alabama, that show he wasn't an explosive 20-yard play guy. However, he did have a nice percentage of those 10-yard runs, right?
Right.
And there'll always be talk of what is an explosive play when it comes to a running play. To me, I don't know why they're trying to drill that down to give running backs more value than they should. To me, a 20-yard run is a 20-yard play is a 20-yard play, and that's an explosive play. I don't think you should change it because of the positions different positions involved there. But that said, if you go back, one of the more encouraging things when it came to Najee, I think statistically, outside of the 20-yard runs was his little bit higher percentage of 10-yard runs. Now you can say those came because of that offensive line that he ran through, but and a lot of that is true. But the root of the thing here is that he's not going to be an explosive play runner in the NFL, but he can be a guy that if he starts hitting the hole better, even behind this line that he is now, there could be some more 5, 6, 7, 8-yard runs in there, I think, in the game, instead of it looking like there should be 5 there and him only getting 3. That's the only thing. And once again, I don't fault him for this because he's not used to not having the success that he's had over the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm. It just feels like to me he's trying to find space and trying to find open grass, and that's generally meant trying to bounce plays to the outside to get some of those one-on-one opportunities that he can win so routinely with power and stiff arms and hurdles occasionally and things like that. So whenever he misses a hole, it's because he's bouncing it wide because he's just trying to find some open space. It's been so tough to find up the middle or between the tackles this season.
Right, and we'll see maybe if this line. The best case scenario here, a feel-good feeling here with these final 2 games. We don't know if they're going to make the playoffs or not, but if they can get a couple of wins in these last 2 games, and if maybe a new configuration of this line winds up with, I don't know, Najee having throw out a number, 175 yards rushing in these final 2 games, and an explosive play and a high successful run rate, that at least would give you a warm and fuzzy feeling, I think, heading off into the offseason, the way this running game has looked at times, not only this year, but going back to last year as well, too.
It would. Just looking at the numbers from the Week 8 game against Cleveland, Harris carried the ball 26 times, 91 yards. That's 3.5 yards a carry and a touchdown. So it was a volume performance. The yards per carry, not very good. Baltimore was 3.4 yards per carry. So not a ton of success running the ball in those first 2 games. But of course, when has Pittsburgh had a lot of success this season? It has happened, but not nearly as frequently as it's been needed.
And look, and we'll get into this a little bit. Brown's banged up a little bit in the middle there, and who knows? They might not even have JOK. JOK was listed with an illness yesterday. So anytime you have illness right now, you kind of wonder what's going to happen with a player. And I think JOK missed that first game against the Steelers as well too here. But let's leave it with this when it comes to Najee and the offense line. I'll say it once again. I'm here for it. I'm ready to see a different 5 and to see Najee attempt to run behind that different 5.
I'm with you, Dave. Anything else that Canada had to say that caught your attention?
What do you think about the response to the Ray-Ray McCloud question? And look, once again, Ray-Ray McCloud is a guy that I wish they didn't have to be in a position where they are with him right now. But it's not his fault.
No, of course
right?
not.
And all he can do is run the routes and catch the balls thrown his way. And because I think when you look at the tape and you see how much the position that the Steelers got themselves into, and the Chiefs playing a lot of 2-man in that, that's going to lead to what you had happen in that game, and that's Ray getting a lot of targets and the catches and not breaking any.
Yeah, and that's essentially what Canada said. The Chiefs played a lot of too high in that game, which was no surprise. That's their MO. The league in general is going, and they're playing a lot more too high now than they have really at any time in recent memory. And so that's going to create more opportunities in the slot. No Freiermuth last week. And so there's a lot of factors. And again, I think it's largely because of the RPO heaviness of this offense. There's a lot of slant routes and glance routes and things like that kind of lend itself to hitting the slot guy more often. And so I think there's a couple of factors to go into McCloud being so targeted as much as he had. But of course, if McCloud is your highest targeted receiver or up there, it's usually not a great sign for the health of your offense, generally speaking.
Right. And once again, it's not his fault. The guy is, once again, the one thing you will not hear me complain about Ray-Ray McCloud is effort. I mean, that guy is here for it. That guy gives you a lot of effort. You had didn't you have a kickoff? Didn't you have a McCloud stat for us?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just kind of a,
you're obviously are a bigger Ray-Ray McCloud fan than I am. So
well,
on the floor.
I mean, it's not even a stat. It says like you're good. It just says that you were around. McCloud's the first Steeler to lead the team in kick returns in consecutive years since Rod Woodson in 1992 and 1993. So it's been a long streak of Pittsburgh playing musical chairs with their kick returner, and McCloud has some staying power. His numbers this year aren't good. He's averaging 22.2 yards per kick return. That's like 13th out of 15 qualifiers. Started the season okay in that number, and it's kind of trailed off as the year has gone along. But it's really just more of a quirky stat than it is anything about like how good, or I guess the fact that you did it 2 years in a row says that they valued you to some extent. But I thought it was the quirkiness more than it was like anything else.
So you've had that stat in your pocket for a long time, and I
tweet about it every single year. I mean, every single year for like 5 years, I've been tweeting about this drought, and so I'm glad that streak's finally over.
I wanted you to get it out of your out of your Twitter hopper and get it off your chest there, and so you can replace it with something else. Now, what's the new one that you've got that you're sitting on? You're probably sitting on like 9 or 12 of them, but what's the next one that's on your mind right now?
I don't know. I think you hit on a lot of them this year. Some of the TJ Watt sacks in the first 5 years. I think there's one about TJ Watt sacks. Well, what's the stat? How would I frame it? Most sacks by a Steeler in his first 10 years. I think Watt's almost in the first place. I think it's like 1 or 2 more sacks in 5 years in. So I'm kind of sitting on that one. I'm spoiling them all right now, of course. But some other Steelers kick returners of the past, leading kick returners in terms of kick return attempts. 2016, Fitzgerald Toussaint led the team in kick returns.
Wow.
2013, Felix Jones. 2012, Chris Rainey. 2008, Gary Russell, a Steelers infatuation with big running backs. 06, Najee Davenport. 04, Ricardo Coakley. 1999, Richard Huntley. 1998, David Dunn. Remember David Dunn? I really don't remember David Dunn.
I don't know. I don't specifically remember him. No, I mean I remember him, the name, but I don't remember any. I don't remember the contributions. No.
Yeah, and then again, last time it was a Steelers return man to lead the team in kick returns in back-to-back years. Woodson in 92 and 93, and of course he was such a great kick returner, that Olympic sprinter speed. And so it's now the only sentence where Ray-Ray McCloud and Rod Woodson will be mentioned in the same sentence. It's that one.
And circling back to Ray-Ray McCloud, personally, and I know you weren't as big a fan on this as well too. They should have had Chase Claypool more in the slot throughout this thing since Juju went down. That's my thoughts on it. I think they're going to have to decide what Chase Claypool is and isn't during the offseason.
Well, they view him as an outside Z receiver, right or wrong. That's how they view him.
Okay. Well, I think that's I don't think he's I don't think he's an every snap Z receiver. So I think they really need to think about that. Is that a guy that you really want to move forward with, Alex, as being your primary Z receiver?
Well, do you think he's a good slot receiver to move forward with? Because I don't really know if he is.
I think he has a better chance to be more successful on a play-by-play. I think look. I don't think he should play. I think if you do this right, you move these guys around, obviously. But sure. I think some of his snaps should be in the slot.
Well, let me put it this way. With the way they're currently using their slot receivers, Juju the last 2 years, McCloud this year, Claypool's not going to win there, being the 5.4 yards per catch, RPO, option routes. Like if they change the slot role into someone that's going to run more seam routes, more downfield concepts, I think Claypool can work there. He caught that third down pass down the seam last week. But in the current construction of the offense, it's not going to work for him.
Okay, right. So change it.
Well, that's asking too much maybe for the Steelers with the way they've done things, because Claypool's the hands are a bit questionable, the overall kind of toughness, the option routes, some of the twitchy type stuff, not his game. So if you want to move Claypool to the slot, I get that, but you're gonna have to kind of change what that slot role looks like.
Alex, would you try to trade Claypool?
I know you posted that question on Twitter. Would you trade him for a 4th round pick? I voted no in that poll. I get the instinct to do that, and I think what I'm getting at is,
would you trade him for a 3rd?
Yeah, I'd be pretty tempted to do that. The overall concern is he a great Z receiver? Not right now. No. Is he a great slot receiver? No. So what's his role on this team? It's kind of like, just the role we envision him to be. Is he fitting any of those ideals? And, he's still a young guy, 2nd-year guy, but he really hasn't to the level that I thought he would. So if someone came giving me a 3rd for him, I mean, I don't know. It's easy for me to make these decisions because I don't have to actually make them, but would I do it? Yes, I would.
look, he is the guy that he was on college tape, right? Every bit of
Sure.
it. He was a contested catch, falling backwards. They don't use him probably enough in the red zone like they probably should. But I mean, you got a guy like Freiermuth and all like that, and all. And look, I mean, red zone's really kind of way down the list of Steelers concerns right now. But he's not a guy that's going to separate as a Z on the outside like the way in the fashion that Mike Wallace and Martavis Bryant did, and those kind of previous past excellent Z wide receivers that the Steelers had, Plaxico Burress, those kind of. He's never going to be that guy. Okay, he is a contested catch guy, but even that's been kind of contested this year, right? He hasn't made the amount of contested catches that you'd like to see him. Fortunately, he did have a couple of nice catches in that game against the Chiefs and all. And even though you can use him in the slot, he's never going to be a premier slot guy. So,
right.
I mean, I would seriously, if I could get a third for him, I think I'd move him. And I think I'd reinvest that third in more of someone that can stretch the field on the outside in the Z.
I get that.
I'll get a lot of hate mail on that. I've now become evidently a Chase Claypool hater. But look, that was the first guy that I broke down out of the Senior Bowl that year. And I'm the one that felt like that said, look, this is a guy that can catch the football down the field, a contested catch guy. But in the same breath, I remember one of my main concerns about him being is he's not going to be a guy that stacks on the outside. Now you see that the only thing that you have be able to hang your hat on when it comes to Chase Claypool on the outside is really that play against Denver a couple of years or last year early during his rookie season. Outside that, when have we seen plays like that?
Yeah, they've been too infrequent. And some of the jump balls, which I know are contested, and they're it's hard to win consistently in the NFL. That's why they're called 50-50 balls. But he just hasn't done it enough. And then again, all the other stuff, obviously the immaturity and those things have not done
I can deal with that. I can deal with that. The guy's running past people.
Sure. Yeah.
Those kind of things. So I don't know how we got on the Chase Claypool talk here.
I think it was bouncing off the whole McCloud and the slot and that whole thing. But let's slip over to Keith Butler here, unless something else that Canada said was super important. Butler, not as much to talk about today. Did have an interesting comment about Robert Spillane. I think it just goes back to Butler's old school stop-to-run linebacker mentality. Asked about Spillane. He said, quote, "I'm glad we have him. I'm very glad we have him. He'll be a starter one of these days, I think." And so that was his evaluation on Spillane's future.
I'm a big Robert Spillane fan. You want, the way the guy handles himself and the way the guy's overcome what he's overcome, to this point, and still getting snaps in the NFL. I think he's old school, downhill, smack you in the mouth type of linebacker. All that said, I don't think Robert Spillane's going to be a starter anytime soon. If he is, I hope it's not with the Steelers. Bless his heart. But I mean, if there's a guy that gets it and acts like a Steeler, I mean, it's him. I mean, the guy's great in press conferences. The guy gives you 100% when he's on the field. But unless the league goes back to fullbacks and running the football 50 times during the game, that's probably not going to be your guy, because he gets run away from in coverage and. Like a lot of them, he can read stuff. He can fill some gaps, and I'm comfortable when he is on the field against the run. But outside of that, I too many flowers from Keith Butler there, I think.
Yeah, but I will say, if the Steelers want to reevaluate and reinvent their inside linebacker position, they have to look for guys who stop the run first and foremost. Because Devin Bush was the guy. He can cover. Joe Sherbert, he's got coverage ability, but those guys can't play the run. They can't play downhill. And so I think the number one quality and trait you got to find in your next off-ball linebacker is someone that can play downhill, be physical, take on blocks, blow up plays, and stuff like that. Because obviously they're not getting that from that group this year, and so it's all built around stopping the run. So. I mean, that is more that Spillane mold and skill set.
Look, you're going to see a lot of Robert Spillane in this game Monday night, I think, right?
Yeah. I mean, especially if Devin Bush doesn't play, then Spillane will be an every down guy except for dime packages. And then if Bush does play and gets activated, then there'll be a rotation there.
Was Spillane in that Week 8 game or no? Or was he out with COVID or? You remember?
I can check. I don't remember off the top of my head. I don't think so, but I will double check. PFR says that Spillane. Oh no, you're right. 15 defensive snaps, 25%.
Okay, so he did play. Spillane did play in that game against the Browns, but not many snaps.
A quarter of the snaps.
Okay, he should get more than that this time around.
Yeah, probably about 35 to 40% in that Week 15 game against Tennessee, where they rotated all three guys. He played 34 snaps, 43%. So you would expect him to be in that 35, 40%, 45% range.
Is Spillane going to be with his team next season?
Well, he's a restricted free agent, right? You put the original round tender on him. I doubt anyone's going to come in with an offer sheet. So if you're going to cut ties with Schobert because of the money, then yeah, I think you bring back Spillane to give yourself some known guys there, and certainly Spillane can still be a backup in depth at that price tag. So that'd be fine. So short answer, yeah, I think he will be.
First snap of the Week 1 game of 2022 is Robert Spillane on the field? That's a good question.
Yeah, it is. My heart says it shouldn't be. I prefer that he wasn't. Who knows? My guess is no.
What your gut's telling you go yes, though, isn't it?
I'm just thinking if they release Schobert, are they going to go with a replacement? But they're already looking for a replacement this year. They obviously didn't trust Spillane enough this year, and they brought in Schobert, had an opportunity to trade for him. So I think that kind of tells you what they feel about Robert Spillane. Yeah, I'll go with no to that question.
Right.
What about you?
I gun to my head right now, I would say yes, but I wouldn't be married to that that answer. But especially if they move on from Schobert, who else in Week 1 first snap? Now you'd obviously want to hopefully get to a point where maybe Buddy or something like that, but maybe
just an outsider, draft somebody, sign somebody. Sure. I think Donta Hightower is going to be a free agent. I know he's older; he's going to be like 32, but they almost signed him a couple years back. I mean, Donta Hightower with that downhill ability would look pretty good in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform.
Yeah, that was the guy that Keith Butler talked about. He was standing on the table for, wasn't it? Back during the draft.
Yeah. Right. The only thing, though, is, Butler's talked about that Tomlin's more like the pass guy and Butler's more the run guy. So what is Tomlin going to value in terms of a linebacker? Is he going to value the coverage aspect of it more? That's why they draft Devin Bush and they bring in Schobert and stuff like that over Spillane. So I don't know if that thought is going to change based on how bad this run defense was, but that is something to consider as well.
All right. What else did either one of the coordinators have to say?
Let's see. Butler on Loudermilk said that he's getting better, still has to take on people at the line of scrimmage and not get knocked off the ball. I think he will do that as he gets older. Yeah, he's a guy that still has to probably gain some muscle, gain some weight still. But I thought I had a compilation of at least 4 or 5 plays of him against KC getting off of blocks and just playing a really technically sound game. So still work to do. But and again, him being technical is not a surprise. It's kind of who he was coming out of Wisconsin. But I thought that was one of his better games of the season. Yeah,
there's a couple of things that I highlighted in that Tennessee game as well too. So the arrow is moving in the right direction with him.
For sure. And then Butler talking about Ahkello Witherspoon, keeps talking about the urgency, and no one ever asks him what urgency means. I wish it's a burning question that I have. But Witherspoon, yeah, if Hayden's gone, you probably re-sign Witherspoon just to not have giant holes at cornerback going in the offseason.
What did you think about Hayden talking about his situation a couple of days ago?
I appreciate the candor. I mean, he said obviously his focus is on winning now, but he has free agency. It's a looming thought. He's thinking about his future himself. And we talk about Ben and obviously what probably his final 2 games. This could easily be Hayden's final 2 games in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform. And so, yeah, I mean, I know some people were upset that he even mentioned the word free agency, but how could you not think about your own personal future and stuff like that? That's pretty natural to do. So I wasn't mad at him for it. I appreciate the honesty.
Right. I don't fault him for it.
Yeah. Anything else there from the coordinators? Canada speaking a little bit more. I think he's talking a little bit more than he was, but that's a pretty low bar, I suppose.
Right. Yeah, I don't think there's much to scrape the barrel with there.
All right, Dave, I think it's a good time here for us to take a break and get to our guest today. That is going to be, for the second time this season, Scott Petrak. He writes for the Chronicle and Telegram, the Medina Gazette, brownzone.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Scott Petrak, Petrak. Let's take a break here and come back with Scott. And actually, Dave, before we get to Scott, some late-breaking news coming in here while we're recording the podcast. Steelers have announced they've placed 3 players on the reserve COVID list today, 2 starters, including linebacker Joe Schobert and defensive lineman Chris Wormley, also Daniel Archibong, defensive lineman on the practice squad, going on the reserve COVID as well. But Schobert and Wormley, the big names there. We just talked about how excited we were to get Wormley back, and Schobert, who has not played particularly well this year, but with Bush still on COVID, hopefully he can get activated for Monday. But who knows? Really puts his team in a tough spot.
Boy, the dynamics change in just a second, don't they?
Yep.
Just talked about, boy, it'd be nice to be able to get Wormley back in some way this week. Look, I guess there's still time for that to happen with these guys, but I mean, I don't know what your optimism is at this point of having either of those two guys for this game.
Low. It's in theory, could they come back with the protocol? I believe so, but based on what's happened to most players this year, and especially in Pittsburgh, those guys are missing still 7 to 10 days, missing at least a game with it happening so late in the week. Even with the Monday game, that extra day, I put those chances of those guys getting activated as pretty remote.
So now you have, and you don't even know for sure if you're going to get Bush back. There's still no report on the Twitter machine that he's back today. So I would assume practice is pretty close to wrapping up on a Friday, right? So that would leave him being able to practice, I guess, Saturday and Sunday if he was able to come off of this thing. Well, they probably wouldn't practice on Sunday, right? Just a walkthrough more than anything.
Probably
there. Yeah. So they would give him 1 day of practice there. This thing's not going in a great direction for the Steelers right now. I got to be honest with you.
And even though the Browns didn't have a ton of success on the ground that first meeting, just 98 yards, I mean, with the way the Steelers run defense is at right now, things kind of collapsed after that Browns game. You're really worried about that. So, if Bush cannot get activated, you very well will probably have to start Robert Spillane and Marcus Allen, a linebacker, and the only other linebacker available to you right now is UG3 because Buddy Johnson has a foot injury. So you're really thin right there. And then again, you played without Wormley last week and you survived it. A lot of multiple starts. So, I mean, you can survive it, I suppose, but you want to have as many guys available to you to defend that Browns run game.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit much to ask Loudermilk to continue to play a large amount of snaps and play at a high level, especially against an offensive line like the Browns as well here too. So, Lord have mercy. It just goes to show you in the COVID world. Mike Tomlin kind of was asked about how the team has handled COVID. So, COVID a couple of weeks ago during his press conference, and seemed and look, this can happen. Not that there's been negligence along the way, I guess is what I'm saying here, but it just goes to show you how quickly this thing can get out of control on you.
It really feels like the teams that are in the best shape this year are the teams that are just able to avoid the COVID list type stuff. Look at Minnesota. Kirk Cousins just went on COVID, so he's not going to be available for this weekend's game, a must-win game for Minnesota. So it really kind of feels like injuries and now illnesses with COVID. It kind of feels like that last team standing. Man,
and now, you've got a couple of guys. This train hasn't stopped, and you have to wonder – here we are on Friday and the game's not until Monday.
Right.
How many more guys are going to go on the list, and are you going to get some of these guys off the list?
Yeah, and again, you can get COVID. Even just trying to be as cautious as possible. But New Year's, if someone goes out, they're around some people. I mean, who the heck knows what could happen? So could you see another spike here right after New Year's? That's possible, I suppose. So 10 players on COVID right now for the Steelers. Again, some of those guys could come back. Guys that were placed last week like Banner and Bush and Buggs, McFarland. We'll just have to wait and see. But right now, Pittsburgh not in a great spot with a must-win game on the docket.
Yeah, you're right.
All right, Dave, let's get to Scott. We'll talk about the Browns and come back in a moment.
Okay, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. It is Friday, and with the Steelers Week 17 game being on Monday night for this week, and obviously hosting the Cleveland Browns at Heinz Field, that means for a second time during this season, we have on a beat writer who covers the Browns and has covered the Browns for a long time, a fan favorite, listener favorite as well too, Scott Petrak. Scott writes for the Chronicle Telegram and Medina Gazette. And also you can find all of his work kind of aggregated together on brownzone.com along with his podcast is there. So if you want an easy way to make sure you keep up with what the Browns are doing this week, of course, follow Scott on Twitter at Scott Petrak. That's Petrak. And as I said, once again, go to brownzone.com. With that, Scott, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex, and an early Happy New Year to you.
Hey, thanks for having me. Same to you guys.
Thank you, Scott. Listen, let's get right to it. It's a loser leave town match on Monday night, and we have talked and written about this week as well too. It's kind of I guess apropos, if you will, Ben Roethlisberger's potentially last home game at Heinz Field. Not only is it on Monday night, where Ben is, I think, 7-0 in regular Monday night football games during his career at Heinz Field, and we all know the record that he's had against the Browns. Not only the Browns in general, but the Browns at home. So, statistically, historically, this thing sets up well for the Browns, but this is the same Browns team that the last time they went to Heinz Field, they obviously came away with the wild card win. So what's kind of the let's start with just kind of the attitude. What's kind of the air there in Cleveland this week? Because this is a Browns team that I think you will agree probably hasn't quite lived up to expectations this season.
Well, I'd certainly agree with that. I think the feeling around here is hope that Kansas City beats the Bengals, and that Monday night means as much as it could possibly mean. This team does not want to be eliminated before the Monday night game. It still feels like if it can find its way into the playoffs, that it can make something happen once it gets there. And disappointed because the last 2 weeks, despite being severely shorthanded because of a COVID outbreak, they only lost by 2 points to the Raiders and the Packers, and they had a chance to win both games in the fourth quarter. So I think there is a sense of regret, but also hope that the season isn't completely, the playoff hopes haven't completely vanished yet.
Do you think their mindset will change much from this team, even if the Bengals find a way to beat the Chiefs? Do you expect any kind of, I guess, mental aspect of this game, or air being let out of the balloon, if you will, if indeed the Bengals do win that game?
I do think that that's natural. I think Pittsburgh would have something similar if they're eliminated, although I know the Big Ben factor would weigh in pretty heavily, I would assume. I asked Kevin Stefanski, the coach, about 10 minutes ago, and he said, "Hey, we can only focus on what we can control. Anything else is wasted energy." But I do think it's human nature to say, okay, we really hope everything goes right for us Sunday at 1:00, and then if it doesn't, how do you regroup for Monday night, especially when you open the season with Super Bowl dreams? So I think that is worth keeping in the back of everyone's mind. Monday night game, rival, you would think that would still bring out the best effort, but I would have to see it to 100% believe it.
Where does this team sit right now from an injury standpoint and from a COVID standpoint? Right before Alex and I got on with the call with you, the Steelers lost two defensive players in Wormley and Joe Schobert to the COVID list, and this late in the week, even with the new protocols, it makes it hard to guess those players will be back. What did this? This is obviously a healthier team, I think, overall than what the Steelers played back in Week 8. If memory serves me, they had the Browns didn't have Hunt for that game. I think they're missing a couple offensive linemen for that game. I know Myles Garrett's dealing with a little bit of a groin for the last game and a half or so. But where do they sit otherwise from a health standpoint?
Yeah, they're doing pretty good. It's definitely better than the last 2 weeks. I think they have 5 players left on the COVID list, but they're all backups. Greg Newsome, the rookie corner, who's had a good year, cleared COVID protocol. He cleared concussion protocol. I don't know if he'll play every snap, but I certainly expect him to play at least in the slot if he doesn't play every snap, outside and inside. Myles Garrett was hampered the last game plus with the groin injury. He practiced yesterday, was a good sign. The coaches said he was moving around pretty good. So that's good for the Browns because he wasn't himself against the Packers, although I thought he still played really hard. So the guys to watch are Kareem Hunt. He's missed the last couple of weeks with an ankle injury and COVID. Didn't practice yesterday with the ankle, expected to be limited a day. So they're hoping that he can go Monday. he provides a boost anytime he plays. Nickelback Troy Hills missed a couple of weeks with a knee injury and COVID. He won't practice today, and neither will safety John Johnson, who missed last week with a hamstring injury. So the secondary could be a little banged up, but they have some depth back there, and that's shown up the last couple of weeks. Besides that, they're pretty good.
Scott, let me ask you a question I'm sure fans have asked you and probably really told you about with some very strong opinions all season about Baker Mayfield and his future with the team. Do you think the Browns view him as a long-term guy? I know injuries this year have made him so tough to evaluate his play this season, but my stance is if you're this far into a guy's career and you're still asking, are you the guy? That's kind of your answer right there. If you're still asking that question, what direction do you think the franchise takes with Baker Mayfield?
Yeah, I mean, that's the billion-dollar question around here. Right. I think that it's so hard because they have him under the 50 rookie option next year. So would it stun me if they brought him back and expected him to be the starter? No. That's probably the default position. As you bring him back, maybe you draft a guy, maybe you add some veteran competition, a Mitch Trubisky kind of guy. But say, hey, Baker, go show us you deserve a long-term contract next season. So I think that's kind of the default position, but I wouldn't be stunned if they tried to make a big change in the offseason because Baker has not been as good as he needs to be this year. And I think they feel like the rest of the team is capable of going to the playoffs and winning a Super Bowl. And it feels to me like Mayfield's the one holding them back. So I guess nothing would surprise me given the quarterback position or at the quarterback position. But what is surprising to me is I didn't expect it to go this way. Mayfield played so well over the final half of last season that I thought he'd get that big contract extension. I thought he'd build off of last year, continuity to the coaching staff, continuity to the offensive roster. And it is a big question how much the injuries have affected him because it's not just a shoulder. He dealt with a heel and a groin and a knee. But it feels like it's more than that. It's more than the injuries. It's inaccuracy. It's inconsistency. And I know Kevin Stefanski, we just talked about it today. He's not willing to just blame the injuries. He said in practice, Baker looks good. So just because it doesn't translate to the game, I don't think you can just blame that on the fact he's wearing a harness or that he's banged up in practice.
Sure, that makes sense. I've seen a lot of fans unhappy with Kevin Stefanski's play calling. There's a similar echo in Pittsburgh. I'm sure that's just a fan thing in general, but some people have said Stefanski has been too conservative. Is that accurate, or is that just general fan anger? Is that because of the injuries have kind of made the Browns a bit more conservative, or is there validity to that criticism?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, how you've said it. Fans are so critical of play callers, and especially here. He gets criticized when they run the ball. He gets criticized when they throw the ball. I do think there was a stretch mid-season where it might have been too conservative. I thought there were a lack of downfield shots. Again, that could be related to Baker Mayfield, right? They didn't want him taking big hits because he was dealing with a torn labrum and a fracture inside the shoulder, the left shoulder. So you don't want to go 7-step drop and try to throw deep. You want to get the ball out of his hands. So I think all of it was involved in that. But, you can nitpick plenty of things about Stefanski's play calling, and he certainly has not been perfect. But personally, I don't think it's one of the big problems around the team. The offense as a whole hasn't lived up to expectations. It hasn't made the jump from last year. You can even argue that it's regressed. And, maybe that's his system. If you want to talk system versus play calling, I think there is a difference there. I think the fact that it did not work out with Odell Beckham Jr. and he was gone after that Steelers game, right, on Halloween. Right. Jarvis Landry's been hurt most of the year. And we've mentioned Baker Mayfield a million times. There's been issues across the offense that I think separate from Stefanski's play calling.
Wouldn't this week's obviously we see how quickly COVID can. We in the next 5 minutes this whole thing could look a lot different as we've seen right now. But looking at what the Browns are going to potentially field at this very moment on the offensive side of the ball this week. I mean, they should have. You're expecting Treader to play, right? And by the way, I full disclosure here, I was a huge Nick Harris hater coming out of Washington, but I thought he kind of and look, the Steelers had problems at center with Kendrick Green. I found myself a little jealous that the Browns had a guy in Nick Harris this past week. I thought he kind of represented himself well overall. I might have to send him an apology because I really banged on Nick Harris coming out there. But long story short, I guess they're expecting Treader back. I mean, they're expecting their entire starting five back this week, and then with Baker being back and with it just feels like this will be the best version of the Browns offense that we've seen in several weeks. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say that's accurate. Treader should be back, and he only missed less than a week, so there shouldn't be, there's a worry about some guys when they miss so much time with COVID, the rust, and they're just healthy enough. I wouldn't expect that to be an issue with him. He practiced yesterday. They're missing Jack Conklin, the all-pro right tackle. He's done for the year with the torn patellar tendon. So it'll probably be rookie James Hudson III at right tackle. He's had a few starts there. Hasn't started the last couple of weeks because of COVID issues the 1 week and then the juggle of the lineup. He came back late last week, so they did not start him at right tackle. But yeah, you're right. It's about as healthy as this offense can be, assuming Kareem Hunt is able to come back and play. That's a big, like we talked about, that's a big boost. But yeah, it looks like the offense is, from a health standpoint, where it needs to be. And the hope is that it can finally start to put everything together. And I actually thought last week in Green Bay, Mayfield threw 4 interceptions, but they marched the ball up and down the field all day. I think they punted one time. So I think that's a good sign, and it showed that they could, when Baker wasn't throwing an interception, they could move it running and passing the ball.
I mean, the way the Steelers have played against the run this year, there's no doubt about it that they're going to come out and, like you said, even if they have Hunt, they could probably put both those guys on the field and flex one of them out. Well, I think we've seen them do that a little bit as well too here. But there's no reason to think that they're not going to come out and just try to run it down the Steelers' throat this week, right?
Yeah, what's interesting, I would tend to agree with you, but what's interesting to me about that is, last week people probably thought they could do that against Green Bay, and they wound up averaging like 8 a carry, but they threw first, right? They threw first to open it up for the run, and just probably to confuse Green Bay, because Green Bay probably thought they would run. And the Browns haven't had a lot of success running against Pittsburgh. I know Pittsburgh struggled stopping the run this year, but the Browns haven't been good against them, like most of the time, with Stefanski's coach, right? The last couple of years, you probably take that playoff game out of the equation, and I have to go look at all the numbers. But I know this year, I don't think the Browns ran for 100 yards in the first matchup. So, I would expect them to run. And we talked to Alex Van Pelt, the coordinator, and he said that was one of the things they spent time on during the bye was, how can we run it better against Pittsburgh? He said, we've been hit or miss against them. So I think that will be a focus, and they probably have some scheme adjustments that they think can take advantage of, what Pittsburgh's done so well to contain their run game.
What's the biggest concern for the Browns defense heading into this week? Overall, is it just that because Myles Garrett, you're right. Look, I remember the play specifically he hurt that groin on, and I even posted on Twitter that's a groin on him, and that might slow him down. He didn't, props to him for playing through that and all, but he hasn't looked like the same player since he went tugging there at that injury there, and obviously the pass rush probably going to be a bit of a concern. Is that the biggest concern that this defense has heading into this week?
I would say so. Because they have Newsome back, they should be fine at nickel. They have Ward, Greedy Williams, and Newsome. MJ Stewart has stepped in. He's played nickel. He's played safety. So even without John Johnson, they have Grant Delpit and Ronnie Harrison Jr. and MJ Stewart. So, yeah, I would say the pass rush. Clowney should be back, which will help. They don't have Tack McKinley. He's done for the year with the ruptured Achilles. You hope that the Browns hope that Myles Garrett is better than he was the last 5 quarters, for sure. And then making sure you don't let Najee Harris run wild. Those would be the 2 concerns. So I guess the 2 concerns would be up front. And hey, I forgot you asked about Nick Harris. I was surprised he played as well as he did, because the only real action he got last year, he subbed at guard,
right,
and I thought was dominated physically.
Right.
But at center, he made plays. He got out in space and was able to block on sweeps and in screen game. I thought he played well.
I did too. I owe that guy an apology, because I hammered him coming out, man. I said, "Oh man, just the measurables and everything. It just did." And I thought he represented himself well. And the way Kendrick Green has played for the Steelers this year, I guess I have envy over anybody that has a center that can play well. But good point, Alex.
Yeah, just to kind of finish up the point about the Steelers' run defense. The last time they played respectable run defense was against Cleveland. Only 98 yards last time they've held an opponent under 100 yards. So hopefully that can happen again. But to go to the Browns' defense, you mentioned him, Scott. MJ Stewart. What is his role for this team been? He was a guy I looked at cutdowns because I thought maybe he wouldn't make the roster. He did, obviously, and is playing seemingly pretty well. Is he just a slot guy for Hill? Has he kind of moved around? What's been his role and his impact?
Yeah, it's weird. He did make the team, and he'd been a nickel most of last year. And then this year, they cross-trained him, and he was safety. And then Ronnie Harrison gets thrown out of the first game. Grant Delpit wasn't active. So he winds up playing like 60 snaps at safety. And it's the first time he's played safety, besides the preseason, since like high school. And then guys got healthy, so he didn't play. Like, he was just playing on special teams. You didn't see him play on defense. And then the last 2 weeks when they needed him, he's come in and he's been on the field almost every snap. Safety in the base defense, nickel in the nickel, slot corner in the nickel, and has played well. 11 tackles against the Raiders, 10 against Green Bay, tackles for loss. He makes plays in space, make tackles in space. Now he gave up a touchdown to Devontae Adams, which is going to happen. I don't know if you want him, on a Renfro or an Adams or, whoever's your best slot receiver. I don't know if you want him there 40 snaps, but you can live with him, and you can live with him as a third safety, and they'll probably use him in that role if John Johnson, the third, doesn't play. It's because you'll probably see Newsome be the number 1 slot corner.
And then just overall, my last question for you, and I'll let Dave finish things out. Baker aside, what player has been most underwhelming this year for Cleveland? Is it John Johnson, who I know hasn't played maybe as well as people had hoped for when they signed him from the Rams? Is it Peoples-Jones, who's had some downfield plays, but maybe hasn't taken that step people thought or hoped? Who else has been in that kind of underwhelming, disappointing camp?
That's interesting. I would think about Johnson in that. Although he's got 3 picks. Slow start, played better, and the whole defense has played better the last 6-8 weeks, with the exception of the 45-7 loss in New England. Really starting with that Steelers game, they've played well defensively for the most part. I think you can throw Jarvis Landry in there. I would excuse a lot of that for injuries, but hasn't had the numbers, hasn't had the impact, hasn't been on the field as much as, he'd never missed a game until last year. Has missed several this season. I'd probably put those, and Austin Hooper is fine, but just, big contract, and he really hasn't lived up to that big contract.
Scott, when you've obviously covered the Browns, covered a lot of Steelers Browns games over the years as well too. You know plenty about Ben Roethlisberger. When you look back at Ben Roethlisberger's career and all, is there one particular moment maybe that sticks out? And how would you, if you in a sentence or a paragraph or two had to describe or put Roethlisberger's candidacy or describe it to a young Browns fan, how Roethlisberger played, how would you sum it up?
Well, obviously, surefire, first ballot Hall of Famer, dominated the Browns. We know the record. I think it's 24-3-1 as a starter. The only loss in Pittsburgh was the playoff game last year. When you talk about the longevity is obviously impressive, the durability, all of it. I mean, he's just really impressive. A couple of things that stick out to me, and I've been thinking about this week, is, he opened his career. I mean, you guys know this. He opened his career as a guy that extended plays.
Right.
And I just remember so many times that whether it was Orpheus Roy or Willie McGinnis or Cam Wembley, whoever it was for the Browns, felt like they had a sack on a third down that was going to give the Browns a chance to win a game. And Ben would shake out of the sack, complete a ball deep down the field, and the Steelers go on to win. Felt like that happened time and time again. And now as he's gotten older, he's changed to getting the ball out of his hands in a hurry, quick decisions, and that completion percentage went really up, right? Kept increasing and increasing. And I thought that was an impressive evolution of a player throughout his career. When you talk moments, I got the individual snapshots of him breaking away from guys and throwing passes. And then I remember the one game where he was hurt. I think Landry Jones started and Jones gets hurt like on the second snap, and Ben comes in and wins the game, right? And he's banged up, wasn't supposed to play, and then comes in and plays almost the whole game and wins it. So obviously there's been a ton of moments where he's inflicted pain upon the Browns.
All right, prediction time, and obviously this is Friday. The game's not until Monday. A lot can happen. We'll only hold you to it if it's wrong, Scott. How do you see this one going? I mean, is this being Ben's last game potential last game at Heinz Field going to matter at all? How about a final score prediction? Which are they going to spoil this? Which way is this going?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the big X factor, is how much the emotion of probably Ben's final game affects everything. Does it not? Does, if the Browns withstand kind of the early emotion of it, are they okay? Right. Things calm down and then the Browns just play. Cause I think the Browns are better than the Steelers. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure Baker's better than Ben, but I think overall the Browns are better than the Steelers. So I'm going to pick the Browns 24-20. But like I said, if they're eliminated from the playoffs, who knows? And just how big an emotional bump the Steelers could get from it being Ben's final game at Heinz Field. I think that's a big unknown too.
All right, Scott, look, certainly appreciate it. Here we are on New Year's Eve, and you're spending time with us. That means a lot to us. We get a lot of compliments from our Twitter followers and listeners, and thankful to have guys like you on this show who do such a great job in being a very objectionable when it comes to covering the team, a division team, especially like the Browns as well too. So Alex and I would like to thank you for being on the show a couple times this year, and during the offseason we'll have you on and start looking ahead toward the draft and all if you'll be on with us again, and we appreciate your time.
Sounds good. Thanks, fellas.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. Again, our special thanks to Scott Petrak, writer for the Chronicle Telegram, Medina Gazette, BrownZone.com. Be sure to follow him on Twitter at Scott Petrak. Be sure to shout him out on Twitter. Let him know that you heard him on the podcast and appreciate his time during a very, very, very busy portion of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And like he said, we caught him in between Brown's media sessions. So for him to carve out that time for us means a lot. And the way you pay guys like that back is you go to brownzone.com and you read his work over there. You hop on the Twitter machine and you shout him out and say, thank you for this. Because look, we're going to want, the season's obviously winding down, but Scott pays attention to the draft. He's one of those beat writers that I really consider all in this thing. So we're probably going to want to have him back on during the off season as well too. So it's important to us for you guys listening to this show to acknowledge the time that these guys spend with us. And it would mean a lot to us if you hop on the Twitter and let them know and thank them for their time.
Absolutely. All right, Dave, no Thursday game yesterday. So let's, before we get into our week 17 picks, let's hear from our friends over at MyBookie.
Yeah, ever since I started out, people have been asking me for advice on all kinds of things. But in covering sports, it's usually about who's going to win and what team they should bet on there. It's why I always tell people that ask me those kind of questions to visit MyBookie. They've got the deposit message, free bets, and huge cash prize contests for you to take advantage of all season long. They also have, if you sign up at MyBookie today, and when you do, if you use promo code TERRIBLE, that's terrible, you can claim claim and match a dollar for dollar match all the way up to $1,000. So if you put $1,000 in deposit on the first time deposit, and if you use the promo code Terrible, they will match that all the way up to $1,000 there. So you cannot go wrong when it comes to MyBookie and that. Look, they've got a great app. We have been advertising with having MyBookie advertised with us for quite a while now. They do a great job. I use their app. I love using MyBookie. They also have contests. Look, it's bowl season right now, and you got to look. What you got the two what do they call those games tonight? Play-in games, I guess, tonight for the national championship with Alabama and Georgia and Michigan. And who's the other? Who's the 14? Cincinnati. I keep leaving Cincinnati out of that.
Show some respect to the group of five.
I know. But some good games tonight. Also, I think we determined they got like 5 games, six bowl games tomorrow. Our own Jonathan Heitritter is doing a great job of previewing those games as well, too. So if you want to get in on some of that action there, go to mybookie.ag and do it now and use promo code Terrible when you do sign up to make sure you get your dollar for dollar match bonus there. So bet anytime, anywhere at MyBookie.
All right, Dave, we will wait until, of course, Monday to preview and pick the Steelers-Browns game, but let's make our picks for the rest of Week 17.
Ooh, Week 17, Las Vegas Raiders at the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts laying 7, despite possibly being without Wentz in this game, right? So Colts -7, and that Hard Knocks with the Colts is absolutely fantastic. I really look forward to watching that every week. Colts -7. Who do you have?
I know the Colts have gotten a lot of other pieces back, Nelson and Leonard, and they still, of course, have Jonathan Taylor, who should be in the MVP conversation. I'm going to go with the Raiders, though, in this one.
I'm going to go with the Colts. I think they have enough on the offensive line and Jonathan Taylor to overcome that. Real impressive. They get Kelly back this week as well too. I think they get all those guys back there. And if they do, I think they're going to be able to run the football. I think their defense is just primed to take away the football from the Raiders there. So I do smell a rat a little bit with this line. I wouldn't be surprised if this line kind of closes up a little bit as we get closer to kickoff time.
And Steelers fans should be rooting for the Colts in this one, right? I think a rooting guy, that's going to be like the one big game to circle for Steelers fans.
Right. I'll take the Colts. I'll lay the 7 points. New York Giants on the road against the Chicago Bears in a who cares game. Bears laying 6 points against the Giants.
Is this our degenerates game of the week? It sounds like it might be. Yeah. I'm glad I came up with that with 3 weeks left to play. That's good process by me.
We're going to have to next year track the degenerate game of the week.
I'll go with the Bears, but it doesn't really matter.
I'll take the Bears. I'll lay the 6 points as well, too. Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road against the New York Jets. Buccaneers laying 13 on the road against the Jets.
I know the Bucs have dealt with a lot of injuries. Mike Evans is back, though, with the team, and I'm going to go with Brady's Bucs.
The Buccaneers obviously going to win this game, but I will have the Jets just keeping this just close enough. So I'll take the 13 points there and hope that the Jets can cover that. Atlanta Falcons on the road against the Buffalo Bills. Another huge line in this one. Bills laying 14.5 at home against the Falcons.
Yeah, I'll kind of do your Jets pick here, where the Bills are obviously going to win, but the Falcons find a way to cover, maybe a late garbage touchdown, bad beat kind of situation.
Ooh, I got you speaking a language with some bad beats there. I'll take the Bills. I'll go the other way. I think they blow them out. I'll lay the 14.5 at home against Atlanta. Philadelphia Eagles on the road against Washington football team. I told you that hurt. That jam hurts, man. 1 week. He's got my attention. I'll tell you that. Eagles on the road. I think still mathematically alive in this thing, and very much so. Laying 4 on the road against the Washington football team.
Just trying to think who's even healthy for Washington. They have gotten guys back. I know Gibson just went on COVID, though. That's going to be a big loss for Washington. Give me the Eagles in this game.
Yeah, I think just the way they are playing right now, and I think I think season's about over for Washington right now as well too. So I am going to go with Hurts and company on this one and lay those points against the Washington football team. Let me see. I just lost my window here. Where'd you go, my bookie? There you go. Kansas City Chiefs. This is a big game that a lot of us going to be paying attention to. Kansas City Chiefs on the road Sunday against the Cincinnati Bengals. Chiefs laying 4.5 on the road. I think they get Kelsey back, and they're still the number one seed, still very much up in the air. So it's not like they can lay down in this game. Chiefs on the road against the Bengals, laying 4.5, and boy, do the Bengals need this one as well too. But the Bengals just need to win one more game of their final two.
Yeah, they win this game, they clinch the AFC North and close up one extra path for the Steelers' playoff chances. The Bengals have been super impressive. I mean, Burrow, I felt like after last year, it wasn't impressive. Had the injury, man, a lot of credit to him. That offensive line interior is still an issue, though, with Chris Jones. I think it'll be a close game. I could see the Bengals covering, but I'm going to go with the Chiefs in this one in a 5-6 point kind of victory.
I think the Chiefs win this too. This just isn't my heart talking. I think the Chiefs win this, and I think they win this going away as well too. I'll take the Chiefs and I'll lay the 4.5 points there. Jacksonville Jaguars on the road against the Patriots. Another huge line. Patriots laying 16.5. This is a college line here. Patriots laying 16.5 at home against the Jaguars.
It's almost too big of a line. I'll say Jacksonville finds a way to cover just because that line is so just huge. The Patriots are going to win this one, but only by like 14 or something.
I will lay the 16.5 at home for the Patriots there. Dolphins on the road. This should be a good game. You got the Dolphins have won something like, 7 straight or something? 8 straight?
Yeah, I think it started, 1 of 6, and now they're like, whatever the number is, big win streak for the Dolphins.
All right, they will play. This is, the playoffs I think have started for them now. They absolutely have got to win this game. And I think they need some help along the way, like some of these other AFC teams. Dolphins on the road against the Titans. The Titans laying 3.5. We're rooting for the Titans in this one, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah. Let the Titans win the division and just not allow any sort of path for Miami to sneak into a wild card spot. I'll go with Tennessee in this one. I don't think the Dolphins have had enough firepower overall offensively. Not that the Titans are a big, potent offense either, but they're just more well-rounded overall, I think.
Yeah, I think they'd rip that slipper off and just crack it up over their head, that glass slipper there. So Titans, I will lay the 3.5 in this game against the Dolphins. We're going to be big Rams fans this week as well, too. Rams on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. I don't think, I'm looking at the Twitter machine, I don't think Lamar Jackson's going to play in this one. He was gimping around quite a bit on some practice footage yesterday. I don't even think he practiced today. That's not good news for the Ravens, obviously. And the Ravens, they've just been snake bitten on defense with injuries on top of it. Rams laying 4.5 on the road in Charm City.
Yeah, I got to go with the Rams in this one, even with Huntley back, and he's played well and a better option than Josh Johnson. Just can you cover Odell and Jefferson and, of course, Cooper Kupp, who's having a historic year that no one's really talking about how crazy of a year Cooper Kupp is having. He's already set the NFL record for most receptions and most yards in a season, and has 15 touchdowns to boot. So I don't know how Baltimore's going to cover this guy. Rams win big.
I'm with you. I will take the Rams laid at 4.5. And if you're a Steelers fan, that's obviously what whether it's 1 point or 20 points, you're hoping for a Rams win over the Ravens here. Broncos at the Chargers. Who do we want to win this game, Alex?
Denver.
Yeah, I think we want Denver to win this one because the Denver lost last week, so their hopes are about done. The Steelers would for Denver to catch the Steelers. I mean, it wouldn't matter at that point
because the Steelers would have to lose, and if they lose, and then it's moot. Yeah,
right. So Denver at the Chargers. The Chargers laying 6.5 in this one. Chargers still very much alive. We're hoping for a Broncos win, but will they get it?
Chargers have been a tough team to figure out. A lot of my picks here have certainly benefited Pittsburgh. I'll say this one does not, and the Chargers win by 10 points, something like that.
You kind of wonder which Chargers team you're going to get from week to week right now. But Yeah, I see the Chargers, unfortunately, winning this one and covering that 6.5 as well, too. Houston Texans, boy, they pulled. They were the team that beat the Chargers last week there. Mm-hmm. No respect for them, though. They go on the road to San Francisco, plus 12.5. 49ers laying 12.5 without, I don't think Garoppolo's playing in this one. So laying 12.5.
Yeah, so could it be Trey Lance versus Davis Mills, rookie versus rookie? Mills has played well, though. There's some confidence there in him. They have something in Mills. I'll say the Texans cover. Won't win, but they cover.
I'll say the Texans cover as well, too. I'll take the 12.5 points there. Arizona Cardinals on the road against the Cowboys, who, I hate to say it, man, Cowboys look like they might have something this year, for sure. Cowboys laying 6 at home against a Cardinals team that's kind of went into a little bit of a spin here.
Yeah, they're sputtering for sure. I'm going to go with Dallas in this one. I've been super impressed. Defensively, they're hanging in there. And, I mean, they just have so many great skill players. Even a guy like Dalton Schultz at tight end is playing well for him. And then, of course, you got Dak and Lamb and Cooper and Zeke and Pollard and all those guys. So, yeah, give me Dallas.
Give me Dallas lay to 6 points as well, too. Not much analysis there other than that Dallas is just playing really, really well right now. Panthers on the road against the New Orleans Saints. Saints on at home laying 6.5. Well, I had to say, boy, the Saints, I just kind of wonder if they could have stayed healthy, you know?
Yeah.
At the quarterback position, but they've had to play some people at quarterback that they didn't think they're going to have to play at quarterback this season, and obviously didn't have had their key wide receiver. I think I had them as playing in the NFC Championship game this year. That obviously not close there. Saints laying 6.5 at home against the Panthers.
Yeah, New Orleans has started 4 different quarterbacks this year: Winston, Hill, Simeon, and Ian Book last week. Yeah, give me the Saints in this one. The Panthers are totally limping to the finish line. They're starting Darnold. Matt Rule, will he get fired? It certainly could happen, and so I'll go with the Saints in this one.
Give me the Panthers plus the 6.5. I think Panthers can win this outright as well, too, if you want to bet that money line there. Minnesota Vikings at the Green Bay Packers. Packers laying 7, and I don't think the Vikings are going to have Kirk Cousins for this one.
No, he will not. He's out for this game for sure because he's unvaccinated. So it'll be Sean Mannion starting for Minnesota. And so give me
Oregon
Green Bay for
State,
sure.
right?
There you go, Oregon State. I mean, is that line going to change? I don't know if that even reflects the Kirk Cousins line or not, but I probably will change. So get it now and get Green Bay.
Yeah, get it now and definitely take Green Bay lay to 7 points there. All right, and then that leaves the final one with the Cleveland Browns at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Right now, that line is the Browns laying 3.5 on the road. We'll see how it changes. We will not pick this game until Monday afternoon because Lord knows what it's going to look like and the line on top of it there. So those are our picks going into this weekend. And once again, we will pick the Browns-Steelers game on Monday during the podcast.
All right, Dave, let's get to some read emails and close out today's show.
Brandon says, what kind of things do you guys look for when you watch draft prospects on film? Well, that's a very open-ended question, Brandon. It would take probably 30 minutes to properly answer that. Probably still wouldn't be answered correctly. I'll tell you what, my list of things grows every year to some degree when it comes to all positions. You know, my big thing now that has come out of last year's tape study, especially when it comes to offensive and defensive linemen, is making sure to properly look at how often these guys are on the ground. You know, that's a big point of it. You can play well for 45 snaps in the game, but what happens if you're on the ground for another 10 of them? You know, those are one of the things I think, trying to pay attention if you can get the all 22 on like wide receivers and their ability to separate off the line, even if the ball doesn't go to them. Things like running backs and be able to break contact in early contact in the backfield, then it's one thing for a running back to be able to run through a hole and run 70 yards down the field behind a nice hole, but what can he do when he's hitting the backfield? Those kind of things. Alex, anything you'd like to kind of add? It's such an open-ended question there.
Yeah, I would go just to speak even more broadly than that, because you're right. We would have to go through this thing position by position to really nail down that answer properly. But minimum 3 games, at least on a guy. And then I try to look at different portions of the season, early in the year, mid-year, late year, even previous years to see growth and improvement or lack thereof. And the thing I need to work on, especially, and this is probably problematic because I'm not a big college football guy in terms of I'm not watching it every single week, is who are you going against? What is the quality of the man you're facing? Are you facing some freshman? Are you facing some other, potential high draft pick? And so I have to probably get better about learning the quality of opponent and factoring that into the evaluation. But broadly speaking, you just want a good kind of sample size where it's broader. It's not just 3 games from 3 straight weeks. You don't want to be super low quality opponents, and definitely the more you watch, the better and clearer picture you'll gain.
Brandon, if you're new to this and you're, just watch tape. Just watch tape and watch more tape, then watch more tape. The more tape you watch, the better you'll get, period. Absolutely, because you'll start picking up on things. And that's how we all started. We are constantly learning more and more things. It's not a science. If it was a science, someone have the market on it, and it's not. But the thing that I try to go into with any prospect is I try to, any bias that I think that I might have in my head, I do my best, and it's not always easy, is to remove all biases about the prospect before you start watching the film on them, and kind of go from there. So hopefully we helped you out a little bit there.
Real quick, Dave, and I apologize to interrupt the emails here, but I just wanted to get to one other Steelers story I should have mentioned earlier. Hines Ward not part of the 2022 Pro Football Hall of Fame finalists. Other receivers got the nod ahead of him. That was Torrey Holt, Andre Johnson, and Reggie Wayne, also Devin Hester. That's mostly though for the return aspect of things. So Ward not going to make the Hall of Fame this year for another year in a row, and so his chances really seem to be narrow at this point.
It didn't surprise me. I don't think it surprised you, Alex. And we've taken a lot of heat for this, and we're going to continue to take a lot of heat for this. If Hines Ward ever gets into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, if at all. But it's going to be a hell of a path for him. Right now, he's right. He's starting to experience that log jam really coming with these logs, and there's more logs going to be on the way. What's going to happen 5 years after AB retires and some of these other guys right now retire? Then Hines Ward's running into a different set of logs, if you will. We understand the blocking aspect. Nobody understands it more than me. Trust me. I watched nearly every snap of Hines Ward's career. I get it. They made a new rule, but it's the Hall. It's the Hall of Fame. It's not the Hall of Very Good. Yep. And Hines Ward is fighting that, unfortunately, and it's. I hope he gets in, but I'm not expecting. I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime. And I hope I live a little while longer. But it's just going to be a hard path for him. Period. Yeah,
I honestly, sincerely believe his best and maybe only path is going to be like a seniors committee thing 15, 20 years from now, where the old heads kind of remember back in my day, Hines Ward with all those great blocks, like one of those things, because he's already behind those 3 receivers who are ahead of him right now. It's going to take a while for all those guys to get in. Plus, you said all the new faces that are going to come up year after year. The path becomes harder, not easier as you go down the line. And so I just don't see it happening in the conventional, sense of him getting enshrined and voted in.
And once again, I know we're going to take a lot of heat from that, but we try to be as objective as we can with these things and let you know how we feel. And that's exactly how we feel and have felt for a while now with him. All right, Bryce writes in on coaches. Based on what he did in Cincy, not sure I'm sold on Austin being the new defensive coordinator if Butler is fired. Also seeing the regression of the inside linebackers and how the wide receiver lacked effort on run plays and the inconsistency of Claypool. How possible is it that Olszewski and Hilliard meet the 2 Bobs? Right now, what's your gut feeling on Kevin Colbert? Does he come back next year or will he retire? I don't see how you can make any decision on Terrell Austin right now as far as not being sold on him.
What do you mean by not making any decisions on that?
I don't see how you can be against how Bryce says he's not sold on Austin being the new DC.
Yeah, he's saying that his time in Cincinnati, because he got fired mid-year, I think. He had a bad year there. I get that, but anytime you hire a former whatever, it usually means they got fired because they didn't do their job well enough at whatever stop they were at. So, unless you just want to go with new faces every single year, which I suppose you could. I think it'll be either Austin or Dunbar getting promoted. My my gut tells me Dunbar, just because it's still going to be Tomlin's defense. I don't know if Austin kind of wants to just run Tomlin's offense the way that Tomlin wants it, but I think it'll be one of those two guys.
What's your thoughts on Olszewski and Ike Hilliard?
It's possible. I really don't know. I mean, trying to judge some of these, positional coaches, obviously the linebackers, the inside guys have not played well, and that's Jerry's group. Is that his fault? I think it's kind of hard to say that it is, given Bush's struggles and injury and Schobert getting traded so late. And Hilliard, I think, Deontay's had a really good year and progressed. I mean, Claypool, hasn't taken the step, but again, how much do you put that on the coaches? It's really hard to see their process. So it is tough to gauge those guys because you just don't get to see the work they put in the way that you can, say, a player.
Kevin Colbert.
Another one that we should talk about that more because he could easily go out with Ben. My thought has always been that I thought Colbert and Ben would leave together, but I don't know what's in Colbert's heart and mind and things like that right now. Would he want to stay an extra year to try to begin building this team in the post-Ben era to leave something for the next guy? Or would he say that I want to give the new guy a fresh start and just let him build it in that post-Ben era along with Tomlin? I'm not sure. I really think it could go either way. I would not be surprised by either decision. But again, my thought has always been that Ben and Colbert will leave together.
The problem with this is that the way his contract's set up to run through a draft.
Right. Well, he would retire after. He wouldn't go through the draft and then leave. I mean, I think most coaches are set through the draft. He would retire just after the season ends.
Right. But I mean, that does put a expiration date then.
Sure. Yeah. His decision would have to be quick. It had to be made within the next month.
I have no clue which way it's going to go. I will tell you this. I have always been, for a long time, been a huge Kevin Colbert supporter. I don't think he's made some great decisions as of late, especially when it comes to some drafts. So it would not surprise me either way. If obviously you would think if he stays through the draft, you think he'd stay through the season, right?
Yeah.
Or do you think he'd draft and say, no, deuces? No,
that'd be horrible. I mean, it'd be a really crappy thing to do. I mean, that's so rare for anyone to do. It's happened with the Jets, I think. And I mean, that would be just either you're in or you're out, and you got to make a decision before the Senior Bowl. And so that's going to be made within a couple of weeks here. So you will find out our answer within 4 weeks. I'll tell you that much.
He says, what's the gut feeling? My gut feeling is I don't know. I really don't know which way this is going to go with him. That is my gut feeling. Plain and simple, I would not bet either way on this.
That's a fair way to put it.
Let's see here. Craig Foster, Tuitt season. Thanks for another great season. Could the Steelers have placed Tuitt on the non-football injury list to recoup some of his salary and cap space? Do you think they want him back next year? Is his career as a Steelers player over? Craig, look, I mean, I don't know how we can politely put this, but we're kind of tired of being asked to speculate about Tuitt at this point because there's so many unknowns. Now, the non-football injury list to recoup some of his salary and cap space, I don't think that was an option here. The option they would have probably had in all this but it would have had to been the final year of his contract would have been to put him on PUP and him stay the whole season on PUP. And had that been the final year of his contract, it would have told. But they had already restructured his contract, yada yada. So none of that even came into in unless they could have found some way that he had negligence in all this. No, I don't think they could have saved anything this way, anything with him. And the question about do they want him back next year? I would think if Tuitt's mentally and physically 100%, I don't know why you wouldn't want him back. Is his career as a Steelers player over? We cannot answer that, Craig, because we don't know what's going on inside Tuitt's head. I would think if Tuitt wants to continue playing and his mind's right, I would think his Steelers career is not over.
I'm with you. If he wants to come back, I think the Steelers will have him. Will he want to? I guess I can't say that for sure. I'm just under the assumption that he's under contract, and so he will be back. And until that changes, then that's the assumption I'm going to work with right now.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's hard to speculate about. We understand we were asked to do that, but it's hard for us to really speculate on some of this stuff, especially in a situation like that. Jonathan Mason writes in, what's the chances we see a Ben montage for Renegade before a late offensive drive or something in this game? Do y'all know if they have done anything other than defense before for Renegade? Also, Alex, any chance you make it to this game given the circumstances and what was the last game at Heinz Field you attended as a fan? Just curious. I don't think Alex. If Alex better not be going to the game.
Well, about that, actually, I'll see him at the 50-yard line. No, I will not be going. I have not been to a Steelers game in quite some time. I went to a preseason game against, I think, like the Colts years and years, like a decade ago, maybe. It's been a long time, but that's I like sitting from home and just watching it on TV and the comforts of home. But man, I hope they do a Ben Renegade. You'd think that they would with how much it's been talked about, but certainly there'll be tributes and montages to Ben. And I think a Ben Renegade would be pretty cool. Hopefully, the game is close and competitive enough to where a Renegade is needed and it works its magic.
Boy, show a Renegade of him shaking off all them pass rushers. It'd be 20 minutes long, maybe. I don't know. That would be something they're able to do that there. And as far as Alex going to games at Heinz Field, I think Alex doesn't like humans as much as me, but I don't think you miss any. It's nice to have the experience and all like that, but I'd much rather watch the game at home, turn around or rewatch it real quick, watch the press, the post game stuff. So I think I've seen my last Steelers game in person, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, to get to go to this game would be extra special because of just what it all means. And so, by all means, if you can go, go. But the nature of the job and the way the site works kind of demands that we work from home.
Chris Lukehart writes in, hey, guys, I've come to the conclusion that this will be Big Ben's last year. So what I have been doing is really trying to enjoy the good, the bad, and the ugly. I've grown up with Ben. I was 19 when they drafted him, and he's always been my guy. It's a sad day, but I'm so grateful to have had the chance to watch him perform over the years. And I think if it wasn't for Brady, Ben may have 4 or 5 Super Bowls. I just want to remind the fans who are pissed off, just chill and understand you're watching your Hall of Fame quarterback take his last snaps. After this year, it is a world of unknown. Instead of getting mad or resentful, just enjoy the last 2 games, remembering how lucky we are to have had Big Ben for almost 2 decades. Love you guys and hope you're a safe New Year's, Steelers Nation. So kind of a public service announcement, I guess, from Chris there.
And well said. I agree. Enjoy these moments because you're not going to get them back. So enjoy these last 2 games, good, bad, or indifferent.
Paul Brown, David Knox, with this Monday being Seven's last ride at Heinz, I can't help but think all the great memories Ben made for us. I'm blessed to say my dad and I will be in attendance, making a drive from Cincy. Can you both briefly go over your favorite memories of Big Ben? I know you and Alex all will have different perspectives. Alex and I grew up watching the guy. You don't have to, let's see. You don't have to read he says his favorite Pittsburgh at Cincinnati 2010 Monday Night Football. Steelers go up 27-7 in the third after a deep shot. Yes, those were allowed back then to Mike Wallace. I was there with my dad and about died after Steelers allowed 14 unanswered points down the stretch and almost 21 in the final second. Steelers win 27-21. Paul, there's not enough time to go over just all the memories that at some point, I'm sure we will spend a lot of time reflecting on a lot of those memories. And really, I don't think Alex has much of a different perspective as I do, to be honest with you. I mean, Alex saw the same guy play, so
maybe from an appreciation standpoint, if you saw the crap pre-Ben and I didn't experience it as much as you did.
Okay. Maybe from that standpoint, but Paul, I promise you that we'll have plenty of time, during the off season and all and moving forward to reflect on favorite Ben memories, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously you have the Super Bowl plays and the big time plays that everyone knows. I just like the little plays, like I mentioned this on Twitter the other day, him throwing off Terrell Suggs and tossing the ball out of bounds left-handed on that, before the touchdown to red zone Redmond to beat the Ravens that game. The 3rd and 18 scramble he had away from I think it was Marcus Stroud against the Bills he had like one ankle he was running on. I mean, just the toughness and those kind of just unconventional, crazy plays that are easy to forget about, in the grand scheme of things, but just kind of made Ben.
Frank Mencken writes in, hello, David. It's Frank from North Carolina, wishing you guys and Steelers Nation a happy New Year's. And since this is probably Ben's last home game, wondering if you guys had a favorite throw or play from him. My favorite throw is one to Holmes in the Super Bowl, and favorite play is probably him shrugging off Suggs to avoid a sack, leading to the game-winning touchdown. Thank you, Frank. Not bad choices there, man. Not bad choices at all. For everything that Ben was defined as kind of being up until that point that he made that throw to Santonio Holmes in a Super Bowl. I think that opened up another aspect of that guy can make big throws, pinpoint kind of throws. So I think you chose a couple great plays there. I'm never, ever, ever, ever going to forget that touchdown to Holmes in that Super Bowl, and never going to forget him shrugging off Suggs either. So good choices there, Frank.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, anything with a pump fake to me is awesome because he was just the master at the pump fake. But yeah, too many to mention there. How about the one to AB that set up that Boswell game winner against Green Bay a couple years back on that left sideline? AB made an incredible catch, but it was a pinpoint throw. Yeah,
toe tap catch.
Yeah, and that was just a great throw catch and to win that game.
Talking about the Packers, that game against the Packers several years ago.
With the Mike Wallace touchdown?
Yeah, with the Mike Wallace touchdown. Just incredible game overall by Ben. Chuck writes in, Connor Hayward. Dave, how do you see the 2000 Steelers offense using Connor Hayward? Look, I already received a little bit, I think, hate on Twitter last night on this. I think he's a very, very talented. I mean, he's definitely got the Hayward genes for sure. And boy, that touchdown catch he made over the middle. Did you see that? Did you see his touchdown catch in that game last night?
I didn't actually, no.
Oh, yeah, it's easy to find on okay. Twitter. Make sure you check that out there. Middle of the field, past 10 yards, past the line of scrimmage, touchdown catch. How do I see Connor Hayward at the NFL level? I have not watched 3 full games on him, but I think I know enough about him from what I have seen so far, which is very little. He's going to be a fullback special teams player in the NFL. He's 6 foot, 230 pounds for starters. And if that's what the team site lists him at 6,000, I'm kind of wondering what he's going to come in on the true measurement. He's going to come in like 5'11" and 3/8 or something like that. That screams fullback. End of line tight end. Maybe on that rare occasion, but I think Connor Hayward's path to the NFL and surviving in the NFL is as a fullback / special teams ace.
Yeah, that sounds about right from the little that I know about him. Kind of that H-back, fullback, special teams. Kind of guy. That sounds accurate.
Let's see. I think one more in here. Lenny Barsikowski writes in, Dave, what is the definition of a rebuild exactly? Here's a question I have for you, Alex, before I forget. If a tight end can't block, is he really a tight end?
Yeah, I think you had posted that question on Twitter the other day. I mean, that's a lot of tight ends these days. These kind of glorified wide receivers who just kind of play in line some.
What is a tight end now?
That's a very existential question. I mean, yeah, I get what you're saying. A lot of these tight ends are the move tight ends, which basically means wide receivers that we just call tight ends and pay like tight ends. But yeah, I get the point you're making there. I
mean, a guy like Pitts, I mean, if these guys can't block, then and you can't use them on the end of the line of scrimmage, 30 plays a game effectively, then and I think this kind of goes back to what Belichick had to say about tight end position, but these tight ends got to start blocking better, right? If you're going to spend a first, second round pick on them.
Well, I think you're in one or two camps. You better be a great receiver or a great blocker. You better you better excel at something at the tight end position. Otherwise, you're not going to really have that great value.
I love this. You're going to see Cole Turner down at the Senior Bowl, right? I love that kid, but I mean, aren't these guys just wide receivers?
Yeah, the problem is you get a lot of tweeners, and unless you are a Kyle Pitts, where your physical traits are like A+ and elite and off the charts, and you're going to win based on that alone, it is hard to create enough value. If you're just kind of like a good receiver, but not a great one, and as a blocker you're pretty poor, then that fit and kind of role becomes tough to really kind of drill down.
But I didn't. That Wisconsin tight end last night. I can't wait to dig into a little bit of film on him. He excites me, and then that obviously Bartholomew for Pitt. Watch that kid, man. That kid is old school. He's going to end up being a first or second round tight end if he stays healty. Throughout
he's a freshman,
career.
right? It's gonna be a couple
yeah,
years
my God, he is. And you'd swear he isn't. You look at him play already. I hope they don't lose him to the portal or something like that. Lenny, let's see. What exactly is the definition of a rebuild? Enjoyed conversation on the live stream and podcast about the organization not having enough support for Ben, but Ben knew what the O-line was getting a makeover. Concerning almost every rookie we drafted is starting, isn't this the beginning of the rebuild? In my opinion, Ben should have hung it up 2 years ago when he was injured. Unfortunately, he will be in the category as having stuck around too long. These last 2 years, he's a below average quarterback. Dave, did you mention at the end of Wednesday's podcast that you were actually attending the bowl game in Arizona? Lenny, that's a way to strike a nerve there, Lenny. I should be at that bowl game, I think, about right now. And the Arizona Bowl got canceled. My wife and I were looking to get away to Tucson. That obviously all changed about this time last week, I think. So once that bowl game got canceled, we canceled our trip there. So unfortunate, but that's life in the COVID world, unfortunately. What about his thoughts about what exactly is a rebuild, Alex?
Yeah, I don't know how you want to, define the word rebuild. I mean, I just call this a transitional phase for the Steelers, a new chapter. Is that a rebuild? I guess you could make that case, but I don't know how to best define that. I focus less on those words, and I focus more on the here and now, what this team actually has to do, which is finding a quarterback, upgrading their offensive line, improving trench play, and getting some big play, ability, hopefully from the receivers.
I don't know how to define a rebuild exactly either at this point now. I mean, look, with draft and free agency, and you point to teams like the Patriots, did they rebuild? What did they do? All they did was transition, didn't they?
Yeah, it was a very quick rebuild. It was 1 year, and they were back in it. One down year with Cam as their bridge quarterback, and they're back, competitive once again. So,
but was it a rebuild? It was, or was it a failed transition for 1 year?
Yeah, I think it was. They called it a rebuild. It was just a very quick one. I mean, they rebuilt their team. I mean, they brought in a ton of free agents, and they found a new quarterback, and that was the rebuild. It was just done in extremely fast fashion.
So he wants to know is technically isn't this the beginning of a rebuild for the Steelers?
I mean, you can call it that, I guess, and that's fine. I think anytime you go find your next franchise quarterback, there's kind of a rebuild element to it, and there's obviously a lot of new pieces here with the O-line and this team overall. So, I mean, they'll never call it that. It'll be retooling, is what Rooney and Tallman and them will say. But I don't get too caught up in the actual, vocabulary of it.
I don't either. And I think in today's NFL with the salary cap and all like that, teams can go from being out of the playoffs 1 year to in the playoffs the next year, and vice versa. You can lose a quarterback and during the season, and you were expected to compete, and then out you go. All I know is this: in the NFL, you better have above average pass defense. You better have an offense that can move the football and have explosive plays, and you better have an offense that can, when they do run the football, be able to run it successfully. And outside of that, I think you can remake a team in a heartbeat via the draft and free agency, as long as you're not screwed up from a salary cap standpoint.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And so we'll get into the nitty gritty, though, of what there is to talk about and how they address and what specific moves they make in the offseason, in a couple of weeks from now.
All right. Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you for making the Terrible Podcast as successful as it has been this past calendar year. Alex and I certainly do appreciate all the contributions from the staff and and on Steelers Depot and the terrible takes and just everything. Alex and I are beyond grateful. Alex and I just had a conversation just the other day about how grateful we are to be able to do what we do, and people listening to this podcast help that happen. So we appreciate that as well. On top of it, we hope we are continuing to give you the content on this show that you desire. So in the meantime, we will be talking to everybody, I guess, in 2022, right, Alex?
Yeah, we'll be back for Monday's show to preview the Browns game, make our picks, and hopefully have some good news about the help the Steelers have gotten over the Week 17 weekend.
All right, so with that, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, upper right navigational bar. So with that, Happy New Year. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.